Can you see me? So if that's the case, you can please write yes in the discussions. I'll just look at that and then we'll get started. Today is class number 1. तो जो आज हम डिस्कस करेंगे that is going to be basics of environment and ecology, and I'll give you a little bit of an orientation of how we are going to proceed in environment. हम जाने कैसे वाले हैं environment में, इसका एक basics लेके, एक orientation लेके, then we'll get started with today's class. So if you can see and hear me, please write yes in the discussions box. Okay. Aarti, Ipshita, Manish, Saurabh, Ashley, Prashant, Suchi, Om, everybody can hear me, so that's great. All right, so let's get started. Okay, so before I go on forward and talk to you about environment, एक दो चीजें. The science and tech test was uploaded today as promised at 10 a.m. Many people have already attended the test, right? If you want the offline PDF, कई लोग ये request कर रहे थे कि उन्हें offline PDF के through test देना है, तो that has also been uploaded in case you want to print it out and then give the test. वो भी uploaded है, ठीक है? Thank you for participating so actively. If your score is anywhere close to 95, I'm not saying exactly 95, I'm saying close to 95, that means you've done a good job. Okay, if your score is close to 95, you've done a wonderful job. Okay, imagine karo 15 days earlier, if you were to give a test like this, you would not score 95, but if today you're scoring that much, that means you've done a good job. आज की जो फर्स्ट क्लास है एनवायरनमेंट की, उसकी स्लाइड्स हैव ऑलरेडी बीन अपलोडेड. ठीक है, एनवायरनमेंट में थोड़ा सा फॉर्मेट हम चेंज करेंगे while reading and studying, वो मैं आपको अभी बता दूंगा. मैं आपको अभी क्लास प्लान भी बता देता हूं. मोहित, क्लास चल रही है. गुड इवनिंग गाइस, गुड इवनिंग. ओके, ऑल राइट. देखो, दिस इज आवर क्लास प्लान ऑफ एनवायरनमेंट. तो लेट्स लुक एट दैट. आज 4th है, right? Today is when we are starting. It's the 4th of April. So first 2 classes are going to be on the basics of environment. इसमें हम क्या पढ़ेंगे? इसमें we are going to read about ecology, the basics of ecosystem services, etc. etc. जो initially environment का first part होता है, जिसमें हम बिल्कुल basic समझते हैं. Biotic interactions, commensalism, amensalism, etc. Ecosystem services, things like that. Biogeochemical cycles, ये हम करेंगे पहली 2 क्लास में. After that, we're going to do to biodiversity and mapping. Biodiversity में, the first thing that we're going to do is understand the basics of biodiversity. Once we have understood that, उसके बाद we're going to study Indian laws, जैसे कि Environment Protection Act, Forest Conservation Act, Forest Rights Act, Compensatory Afforestation Fund, things like that. Okay, जो Indian laws हैं, National Board of Wildlife, नेशनल टाइगर कंजर्वेशन अथॉरिटी, जो इंडियन लॉज और इंडियन बॉडीज हैं प्रोटेक्टिंग बायोडाइवर्सिटी, देन वील डू दैट. जब हमें एक बार समझ आ जाएगा कि इंडियन लॉज क्या है, इंडियन सिस्टम क्या है, नेशनल पार्क किस लॉ में बनता है, एंड बायोस्फीयर रिजर्व कौन से लॉ में बनती है, एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट, वंस दैट वी हैव अंडरस्टूड, देन वील डू मैपिंग. मैपिंग में वी विल मैप ऑल ऑफ इंडियाज नेशनल पार्क्स, ऑल ऑफ द टाइगर रिजर्व्स, all of the Ramsar sites, all of the elephant reserves, all of that, we'll map that in one place. ठीक है, this is what we're going to do after that. उसके बाद we're going to go for species. जो species पे कई बार questions आ जाते हैं, जैसे नाम डाफा फ्लाइंग स्क्विरल कहाँ मिलती है, एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा. ये इस ऑर्डर में क्यों है कि एक बार आपको इंडिया के पूरे मैप पे you have an idea of where the national parks etc. are. फिर अगर आपको पता होगा कि ये स्पीशीज इस रीजन में मिलती है, तो ऑटोमेटिकली आप रिलेट करके एक आइडिया ले लोगे कि हाँ, यहां पर देयर मस्ट बी दिस पर्टिकुलर स्पीशीज इन दिस पर्टिकुलर नेशनल पार्क. जैसे इफ यू हैव एन आइडिया कि वेस्टर्न घाट्स में इंडिया में कौन कौन से नेशनल पार्क्स हैं, एंड देन इफ आई टेल यू दैट दिस इज वेयर द नीलगिरी ताहर इज आल्सो फाउंड, तो अगर नीलगिरी ताहर पे क्वेश्चन आ जाए और आपको 2 नेशनल पार्क दिए हो, वन इज हियर एंड वन इज हियर, तो आपको पता होगा कि दिस वन इज डेफिनेटली द वन व्हिच वुड बी द आंसर. So going like this, once we finish biodiversity here, उसके बाद हम चलेंगे क्लाइमेट चेंज पे. ओके, we'll understand climate change होता कैसे है, how it progresses, what are the facets of it, developed world का क्या stance है climate change पे, developing world का क्या stance है, etc. Once we've understood that and we've understood the international architecture around it, then we're going to do international conventions part 1 and international conventions part 2. International conventions part 1 and part 2 में basically हम सारी international conventions, things like the Stockholm Convention, the IPCC, the COP meetings, whatever is happening in environment in the international sphere, we'll cover that. उसके बाद we're going to go on to sustainable development and energy, right? Sustainable development and energy में हम देखेंगे जो initiatives दिए गए हैं for sustainable development to ensure that development is friendly with the environment. उसके क्या क्या initiatives हैं, क्या क्या चीजें हैं, all of that we'll discuss. Then we'll also discuss the idea of renewable energy and nuclear energy. Like I said, this is something we had left at the time of science and tech, nuclear energy, because I wanted you to study it here. इसमें जो नए developments हो रहे हैं, things like green hydrogen, etc., etc. This is going to be covered here. Now, after that, we're going to cover in the end environmental pollution, right? Environmental pollution में we will study things like biological oxygen demand, जीरो लिक्विड डिस्चार्ज, जो डिफरेंट पोल्यूटेंट्स हैं कहाँ से रिलीज होते हैं, एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा. सो ऑल ऑफ दैट वुड मीन दैट योर PT 365 और करंट अफेयर्स इज कवर्ड एंड द बेसिक्स एंड स्टैटिक ऑफ एनवायरनमेंट इज ऑल्सो कवर्ड. तो ये सारा कुछ मिला के वी आर गोइंग टू कवर. एंड में एज यूजुअल जैसे लास्ट टाइम रखी थी, आई हैव केप्ट 2 रिजर्व क्लासेस just to account for any contingency, right? And as you can see here, the last date is the date that I promised you, 20th April. So 20th April tak we will be done. Now, the difference in the format is going to be that अब आप लोगों के पास टाइम थोड़ा सा कम होगा because prelims is coming. April start हो गया. I can understand that you would be worried. इस टाइम पे डर बहुत ज्यादा लग रहा होता है. So what I'm going to try to do is that I'll give you 1-pager notes only after we've finished everything. जैसे मान लो हम basics of environment से आज start करेंगे. So the 1-pager notes for basics of environment will be uploaded tomorrow. Tomorrow once basics of environment is complete. हम का part 1, part 2 कर चुके हैं. And I will make my best effort possible to do the 1-pager in class with you, ताकि आपका जो टाइम है वो कम से कम लगे, right? Just to give you an idea as to what your ideal schedule should be if you are giving 2023 prelims. अगर आप 2023 का prelims दे रहे हो and you are also attending this course, I would recommend that from 4 PM when you join me till about 7:30, right? This time you spend here on environment. इसके अलावा आपको बाकी टाइम स्पेंड करना है खुद के साथ. आई एम नॉट सेइंग इतनी क्लास चलेगी. क्लास चलेगी 4 PM to 6:30. ठीक है, 2.5 hours will be the class duration. मतलब आई ट्राई टू फिनिश इट बाय 6 but 6:30 तक आई थिंक चली जाती है with the discussions and everything. एंड आप 1 घंटा उसके बाद लगाओ आफ्टर what we have revised. एंड यू फिनिश बाय 7:30. 3.5 घंटे में आप एनवायरनमेंट का अपना काम खत्म करो. इससे पहले यू डू 1 सब्जेक्ट एंड यू स्पेंड द टाइम डूइंग दैट सब्जेक्ट इन डिटेल, राइट? सो लेट्स से यू वेक अप एट 9. सो फ्रॉम 9 to 4 you spend the time doing your first subject. Okay, so I would recommend that your daily schedule looks something like this, that from 9 to 11:30 you should study. Why this time? Because this is the time when the actual prelims is held. ठीक है, actual prelims इसी टाइम पे होता है. So your body must be ready to study at this time every day. Then you can take a small break. Then again I would recommend that you study from 12 to 2. Again take a small break. Then I would recommend that you study from 2 to 4 or 2:30 to 3:30, something like this. Whatever you want to do. Before 4 o'clock, this much at least you should try and get 5 hours. ये काफी ideal है. But ideally you should be able to get 5 hours into your day before 4 o'clock, right? 4 o'clock you come here, right? So 5 hours you should have already spent studying some different subject. After that, you till 7:30 you spend time here. That would be 8.5 hours. And then you can take after 7:30, I can say that you can take 1 hour or 1.5 hour break, have your dinner, and I would recommend that you spend 1.5 hours after that also before you sleep, right? So if I were to map your ideal schedule, I would say 9 to 11:30 first in the first go. Then you can probably do something like 12:30 to 3. Then take a small break for your lunch, etc. then 4 to 7:30. This session would be slightly long, but it's a class, so it would be easy for you. And then something like 9:30 to 11:30. Right now, if I map this becomes 2.5 plus 2.5 plus 3.5 plus 2. So this becomes approximately close to 10 hours a day, slightly more than 10 hours a day. But this much you must invest now if you are giving prelims this year. ठीक है, ये आपने करना है if you are giving prelims this year, right? So this is what your ideal schedule looks like. तो मैं ट्राई करूंगा कि ये 4 to 7:30 के बाद आपको environment ना करना पड़े. 4 to 7:30 means 4 to 6:30 with me and then 1 hour on your own. So I'll tell you what to revise and what to revise quickly ताकि आपका उस दिन का काम complete हो जाए. Right? This will be my sincere effort so that आपका time waste ना हो and आप prelims में 3.5 घंटे लगाओ बस environment के लिए. And it's better that the class is happening towards the end of the day ताकि सुबह आप fresh रहो and spend this time doing your other subjects. Okay? जो polity है and economy है, अगर आप वहाँ mess up कर दोगे तो there is no point of then doing well in science and tech and environment. Okay? Science and tech environment आपको तभी returns देगा जब आप पॉलिटी, इकोनॉमी और मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री जैसे सब्जेक्ट्स में मैस अप नहीं करोगे. सो टेक द टाइम नाउ एंड रिवाइज ऑल ऑफ दैट. ओके, नाउ द बेसिक्स इज डन, द ओरिएंटेशन इज सेट. नाउ विल जस्ट गेट स्टार्टेड विद द बेसिक्स ऑफ एनवायरनमेंट फ्रॉम द फर्स्ट स्लाइड. लेट मी जस्ट लुक एट द कमेंट्स एंड देन विल गेट स्टार्टेड. Yes, you can give the test later. Slides are uploaded. You can just refresh the portal and you'll see them. Yes, Hardik, we'll cover waste management when we are covering pollution. You do not need to follow any book. ठीक है, कोई book follow करने की जरूरत नहीं है. But if you want, you can follow Shankar if you want. But कोई जरूरत नहीं है, उसके बिना काम चल जाएगा because I am doing it. Right? मैं भी कहीं से पढ़ रहा हूँ. I am not generating this knowledge on my own, right? तो अगर मैं पढ़ रहा हूँ फिर आप भी पढ़ो तो फिर why are we doing double effort? If you're coming here and you've invested something, then don't spend time reading another book. Read what I'm telling you to read. Okay. All right. So let's get started. देखो, we'll start with environment. बिल्कुल basic से start करेंगे. ये जो बिल्कुल basic चीजें हैं, this is what we have to do today. Environment and biology के basics. तो देखो environment का मतलब क्या होता है? Environment actually comes from the word environner. It is a French word meaning surrounding. Okay, so it is basically the sum total of all living, non-living components, influences and events surrounding an organism. ये surrounding एक organism की comprising of both living and non-living things, of both biotic meaning living and abiotic meaning non-living, इन दोनों को comprise करता है. Environment basically means the surrounding of an organism having both living things that are around it and the non-living things that are around it. So biotic and abiotic factors. Okay, and what is ecology? Ecology basically means this interaction between living organisms and biotic and abiotic environment. जो living organism है उसके around there are some living things, there are some non-living things, right? Its interaction with these, इसके साथ जो इसकी interaction है, that is ecology. And if you look at this system, the person or the living organism along with the living and non-living things around it, this would be what is called environment, right? So ecology is what? Ecology is the study of relationship of plants and animals to their physical and biological environment. Biological environment meaning living environment, physical environment meaning non-living environment. Okay, right. So ecology में we are basically studying the interactions कि living organisms, how are they interacting with things in their surrounding, called their environment. राइट? तो ये इंटरैक्शन स्टडी करने के लिए वी स्टडी एट वेरियस लेवल्स. सो व्हाट आर द लेवल्स ऑफ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन दैट वी स्टडी इन इकोलॉजी? द फर्स्ट लेवल इज द ऑर्गेनिज्म इटसेल्फ. ऑर्गेनिज्म क्या होता है? ऑर्गेनिज्म इज एन इंडिविजुअल लिविंग बीइंग, यानी एक लिविंग पर्सन, एक लिविंग चीज. जैसे आई एम एन ऑर्गेनिज्म, यू आर एन ऑर्गेनिज्म. एक कोई लिविंग चीज जो है वो होती है हमारी ऑर्गेनिज्म. इट इज समथिंग दैट हैज द एबिलिटी टू एक्ट और फंक्शन इंडिपेंडेंटली. ये तो हमें सबको पता ही है कि ऑर्गेनिज्म क्या होता है. जैसे कि एनिमल्स, प्लांट्स, बैक्टीरिया, फंगाई, ये सारे ऑर्गेनिज्म है. देन बात करते हैं पॉपुलेशन की. पॉपुलेशन इज अ ग्रुप ऑफ ऑर्गेनिजम्स ऑफ द सेम स्पीशीज. अब पहले ये टर्म डिफाइन करेंगे कि इस टर्म स्पीशीज का क्या मतलब है. पहले आप ये देख लो, पॉपुलेशन इज अ ग्रुप ऑफ ऑर्गेनिज्म ऑफ द सेम स्पीशीज. एक ही स्पीशीज के ग्रुप ऑफ ऑर्गेनिजम्स को हम कहते हैं पॉपुलेशन. नाउ अगर एक स्पीशीज है तो इस व्हाट डज दिस मीन? इस टर्म का मीनिंग क्या है? स्पीशीज मीन्स टू individuals who when they reproduce, if they produce a fertile offspring, then they are of the same species. अब इस बात का मतलब समझते हैं. If two individuals reproduce to form a fertile offspring, then they are of the same species. Fertile offspring का क्या मतलब? That this individual should also be capable of further reproduction to produce further offspring. Offspring मतलब बच्चा. Offspring मतलब बच्चा or things that you produce after reproduction. So if two individuals, they can reproduce to create a fertile offspring. Fertile means that offspring can also further reproduce. Then it would be called a species. आपको मैं एक example देता हूं. जैसे if you have two horses, one horse plus another horse, when they reproduce they will form another horse, a baby horse. When this baby horse grows up, it will be capable of further reproduction. So they are members of one species. If a horse reproduces with a donkey, right, then they form something called a mule. This mule, अब reproduction तो यहां भी हो रही है, but ये जो mule होता है, it is sterile. ये आगे नए म्यूल्स नहीं बना सकता, आगे रिप्रोडक्शन नहीं कर सकता. सो हॉर्स एंड डोंकी आर नॉट पार्ट ऑफ द सेम स्पीशीज, बट हॉर्स एंड हॉर्स आर पार्ट ऑफ द सेम स्पीशीज बिकॉज दे कैन रिप्रोड्यूस एंड द ऑफस्प्रिंग फॉर्म्ड कैन ऑल्सो रिप्रोड्यूस फर्दर, मीनिंग देयर इज अ फर्टाइल ऑफस्प्रिंग. तो स्पीशीज की डेफिनेशन ये है. स्पीशीज हियर मीन्स दैट when two organisms reproduce to form a fertile offspring, they are said to be members of the same species. जैसे we are all members of the human species. Okay. Now, next level जो organization हम पढ़ते हैं ecology में, that is community. Now, what does community mean? Community refers to all populations of different species living and interacting in a particular area. मान लो एक particular area है जिसमें बहुत सारे species रहते हैं. उन बहुत सारे स्पीशीज को मिला के हम कहेंगे कम्युनिटीज. तो अ कम्युनिटी में कंसिस्ट ऑफ डिफरेंट स्पीशीज ऑफ प्लांट्स, एनिमल्स, फंगाई, माइक्रो ऑर्गेनिजम्स विच आर इंडिपेंडेंट. वैसे ये इंडिपेंडेंटली एग्जिस्ट कर रहे हैं बट दे आर अफेक्टिंग ईच अदर थ्रू द प्रोसेस ऑफ इंटरेक्शन. सो दैट वुड बी अ कम्युनिटी. तो सबसे पहले क्या हमने पढ़ा? ऑर्गेनिज्म, इंडिविजुअल लिविंग बीइंग. सेकंड हमने पढ़ा पॉपुलेशन, ग्रुप ऑफ ऑर्गेनिजम्स ऑफ द सेम स्पीशीज. थर्ड हमने पढ़ा कम्युनिटी. कम्युनिटी क्या हुआ? डिफरेंट स्पीशीज टुगेदर, ग्रुप ऑफ स्पीशीज. नेक्स्ट लेवल जो हम पढ़ते हैं वो है इकोसिस्टम. देन देयर इज बायोम एंड बायोस्फीयर. बट पहले हम समझते हैं, देखो दिस इज वन इंडिविजुअल और इंडिविजुअल ऑर्गेनिज्म. ये हो गई पॉपुलेशन, राइट, मेंबर्स ऑफ द सेम स्पीशीज. तो ये इंडिविजुअल फिश, देन पॉपुलेशन ऑफ फिश, देन कम्युनिटी जिसमें देयर इज फिश, देयर इज प्लांट, देयर इज स्नेक, देयर इज व्हेल, ऑल ऑफ दैट. तो दिस इज कम्युनिटी, लॉट्स ऑफ ग्रुप्स ऑफ स्पीशीज टुगेदर. उसके बाद देयर इज इकोसिस्टम, बायोम एंड बायोस्फीयर. वो हम आगे अभी देखेंगे. नाउ द फोर्थ लेवल, आफ्टर वी हैव ऑलरेडी स्टडीड ऑर्गेनिज्म, वी हैव ऑलरेडी स्टडीड पॉपुलेशन, वी हैव ऑलरेडी स्टडीड कम्युनिटी. इसके बाद जो फोर्थ लेवल है, दैट फोर्थ लेवल इज एन इकोसिस्टम. इकोसिस्टम क्या है? इट इज द स्ट्रक्चरल एंड फंक्शनल यूनिट ऑफ बायोस्फीयर. जैसे हमने पढ़ा था दैट सेल इज द स्ट्रक्चरल एंड फंक्शनल यूनिट ऑफ लाइफ. Biosphere is that part of the earth where life can exist. अभी मैं आगे डिटेल में बताऊंगा, बट बायोस्फीयर इज दैट पार्ट ऑफ द अर्थ वेयर लाइफ कैन एग्जिस्ट एंड इकोसिस्टम उसका स्ट्रक्चरल एंड फंक्शनल यूनिट है. ओके, व्हाट डज एन इकोसिस्टम एंटेल? इट कंसिस्ट ऑफ द कम्युनिटी ऑफ लिविंग बीइंग्स. तो इकोसिस्टम में एक तो वो कम्युनिटी है, दिस कम्युनिटी, राइट, विच इज ग्रुप ऑफ मेनी स्पीशीज, राइट, एक तो ये कम्युनिटी है. अदर देन दिस कम्युनिटी, व्हाट इज द सेकंड थिंग? द फिजिकल एनवायरनमेंट. So ecosystem has both the living things, the community of living beings, and the physical environment around it, right? So both interacting and exchanging materials between them. So the term ecosystem basically means both living things, the community of living beings, and the physical environment around it. So both biotic and abiotic factors. और ये term first time use करी थी by ecologist Arthur Tansley. So if we look at an ecosystem, राइट, जैसे ये आपका आप मान लो दिस इज एन ओशियनिक इकोसिस्टम. तो इसमें क्या क्या है? देयर इज फाइटोप्लैंक्टन विच इज द लिविंग थिंग्स, देयर इज जूप्लैंक्टन विच आर लिविंग थिंग्स, एंड देयर आर आल्सो द नॉन लिविंग थिंग्स अराउंड इट, राइट. सो बोथ लिविंग एंड नॉन लिविंग आर पार्ट ऑफ द इकोसिस्टम. सो इन एन इकोसिस्टम देयर आर टू फैक्टर्स. देयर आर द बायोटिक कंपोनेंट. बायोटिक मींस लिविंग. लिविंग में क्या क्या था हम देख चुके हैं. पहले हमने देखा था देयर वाज ऑर्गेनिज्म, then there was population, then there was community. Community means all species that are living in a particular place. Population means all the organisms of one species. Organism means one species, one person, one entity. So I am an organism, a member of the human species. All humans together would be human population. Community will be all humans along with the plants, animals, bacteria, all living things that we live in, and we are living in the ecosystem. So in the ecosystem we will have other humans, other species, so community, that is the living factors, and we will have some abiotic components like climatic, जैसे कि rain, light, wind, temperature, other things like soil, pH, minerals, topography. So in my surrounding what is there? There are living things. Living things become their community, and non-living things or abiotic components that are climatic and edaphic. Climatic में rain, light, wind, temperature. Edaphic में soil, pH, mineral, topography, right? So there are biotic and abiotic components. तो हम जो levels of ecology देख रहे थे, in the levels of ecology now we have seen four things. We have seen an organism, individual being, then we saw a population, then we saw a community, then we saw an ecosystem. अब इकोसिस्टम से आगे देखते हैं. आफ्टर इकोसिस्टम देयर इज बायोम एंड देयर इज बायोस्फीयर. बट पहले दीज आर द फंक्शनल यूनिट्स ऑफ एन इकोसिस्टम. इकोसिस्टम में क्या क्या हो रहा है? इकोसिस्टम में क्या चीजें थी? बायोटिक एंड एबायोटिक बोथ, लिविंग एंड नॉन लिविंग बोथ. अब इकोसिस्टम में क्या क्या हो रहा है? एक चीज हो रही है प्रोडक्टिविटी. प्रोडक्टिविटी मींस बायोमास इज बीइंग प्रोड्यूस्ड, एनर्जी इज बीइंग प्रोड्यूस्ड, फूड इज बीइंग प्रोड्यूस्ड. जैसे हमारे इकोसिस्टम में कौन फूड प्रोड्यूस करता है? प्लांट्स. प्लांट्स यूज द एनर्जी ऑफ द सन टू प्रोड्यूस फूड इन अ प्रोसेस कॉल्ड photosynthesis. So this process of photosynthesis would be productivity. Then what is happening? Energy flow is happening, right? From one level to another level, energy is being transferred. From one level to another level, energy is being transferred. So this is energy flow. Energy flow is the sequential process through which energy flows from one trophic level to another trophic level, right? Trophic levels क्या होते हैं ये हम आज ही देखेंगे डिटेल में. बट एनर्जी फ्लो हो रही है. यू ईट अ प्लांट और लेट्स से अ चिकन ईट्स ग्रास, सो इट हैज टेकन सम एनर्जी फ्रॉम द ग्रास एंड टेकन इट इनसाइड, सो एनर्जी हैज फ्लोन. देन यू ईट द चिकन, सो देन energy has now flown from the chicken to you. So this energy flow is one thing. Then there is decomposition. When organisms in an ecosystem die, right? When organisms in an ecosystem die, they are broken down. When they are broken down, their entire body is decomposed, right? ऐसे पड़े तो नहीं रहते वहां पे. The old bodies, they get decomposed or degraded. That is decomposition. And the fourth thing that is happening is nutrient cycling. So nutrient is being turned from one place to other. जैसे आपने सुना भी होगा sulfur cycle, phosphorus cycle, nitrogen cycle. This is what nutrient cycling. So in an ecosystem, these four functions are happening, and we'll study these functions in detail. We will study productivity in detail. We'll study energy flow and trophic levels in detail. We'll study decomposition, detritivores, etc. in detail, and we'll study nutrient cycles in detail to holistically understand the ecosystem. Now, let's now complete whatever levels we were already studying. So we had read already first organism, then we had read population, then we had read community, and now we are coming to the fourth thing, which is ecosystem. Ecosystem के बाद the next level after this is biome. Okay, now let's read what a biome is. So a biome is a large geographical region that has a particular set of climatic conditions. A large geographical region that has a particular set of climatic conditions. Now, what is this large geographical region with a particular set of climatic conditions? Something like tundra, like tropical rainforest, like temperate grasslands, things like this, right? तो इसके examples यहाँ देखो, forest, grassland, tundra, desert, aquatic biomes. अब ये चीज आपने जीसी लियोंग से पढ़नी है because this is a part of geography. वहां पे जब आप जीसी लियोंग पढ़ोगे, you will find that there is a table like this. In this table, there is one, यहाँ पे there is the equatorial biome, then there are divisions like this, and basically you have to read about 11 biomes. Okay, this is the tundra. तो ये जो ऐसी करके एक टेबल आपको जीसी लियोंग में बनाई है, जिसमें स्पीशीज डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन एंड क्लाइमेटिक कंडीशंस ऑफ एवरी बायोम आर गिवन. अगर आप जीसी लियोंग से और कुछ भी नहीं पढ़ोगे तो काम चल जाएगा, बट दिस यू डेफिनेटली हैव टू रीड because every year UPSC asks one question from these biomes. So please refer these biomes from GC Leong if you have not done them already. ये geography का part है, but just giving you an idea, ये आपने जरूर पढ़ना है. Okay. Now each biome has some unique characteristics, right? Obviously, अगर उसकी geography unique है, उसकी climatic conditions unique है, so it's going to have some unique characteristics. And this unique characteristics, because of the geography it has, because of the climatic conditions it has, because of this unique characteristics, the type of plants and animals that are going to be in every biome are different. अब यही बात हमने पढ़ी थी. बायोम में अगर आप देखो, ग्रासलैंड में जिस तरह के एनिमल्स या प्लांट्स मिलते हैं, and if you compare that to the animals and plants that are found in the tundra regions, they are very different. This is because the geography is different and there are a unique set of characters. So that is the next level that we study in ecology. We already read organization, then population, then community, then ecosystem, then biome. The reason I am repeating this over and over again, ताकि आपको क्लास में याद हो जाए और आपका बाद में ज्यादा टाइम ना लगे. So this is a classification of biomes, जैसे कि there is rainforest, tropical rainforest, savanna, desert, and if you go up, there are polar regions में there is tundra, there is coniferous forest or boreal forest. प्लीज आप ये पार्ट जीसी लियोंग से पढ़ लेना, इससे क्वेश्चन आते हैं. राइट. नाउ लास्ट इज बायोस्फीयर. दिस इज द बिगेस्ट लेवल ऑफ स्टडी ऑफ इकोलॉजी. बायोस्फीयर इज दैट पार्ट ऑफ अर्थ वेयर लाइफ कैन एग्जिस्ट. सो एंटायर पार्ट ऑफ अर्थ वेयर देयर इज एनी इवन वन लिविंग बीइंग, दैट इज कॉल्ड अ बायोस्फीयर. एंटायर पार्ट ऑफ अर्थ वेयर देयर इज इवन वन लिविंग बीइंग इज कॉल्ड अ बायोस्फीयर. नाउ बायोस्फीयर इज बेसिकली एन इंटीग्रेटेड एंड इंटरैक्टिंग जोन consisting of atmosphere, so air is interacting, then hydrosphere or water is interacting, and lithosphere or land is interacting. So all three of these, atmosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere, when these three places come together, these three things come together, we lead to the formation of biosphere. Now it is approximately 20 kilometers thick, but most of the life on earth, like if you measure the thickness of the biosphere, it is 20 kilometers, but most of the life on earth occurs between 500 meters below the surface of the ocean and 6 kilometers above the sea level. So if this is the basic sea level, if this is the sea level, इसके 500 मीटर नीचे तक most of the fish will be there, और नीचे भी होंगी, but most will be till this place, and इसके 6 किलोमीटर ऊपर तक most of the terrestrial organisms will be there. So this 6.5 kilometer thickness is where most of the biosphere is, and then the complete biosphere is 20 kilometers thick. Biosphere is what? It is the place where lithosphere or land, atmosphere or air, hydrosphere or water, all of them are coming together and interacting. So this place where life can actually exist is called the biosphere. Okay, so this is the fifth level or the last level that we study in ecology. So as you can see here, interaction of atmosphere, lithosphere and hydrosphere when happening together will lead to the formation of biosphere, where place where life exists. So we have already read the levels of ecology: organism, population, community, ecosystem, biome and biosphere. 6 levels that we study in ecology. What is ecology? Ecology is the study of interactions that are happening at these levels. Okay. Now let's understand what is a habitat. A habitat is the place where an organism or a community of organism lives. Like your habitat is your home. A place where you live, where an organism or a community of organisms live, that place is called habitat. Jahan wo rehte hain, the physical space that they occupy is called a habitat, right? It includes all the living and non-living factors or conditions of the surrounding environment. Let's say I am here, right, in the HRC office, then HRC office becomes my habitat. There are some living things here, like there is Varun sir here, and there are some non-living things here, like there's a light, there's water, there's an air conditioner, etc. So my habitat would be all the living things around me as well as all the non-living things around my place of stay or the place where I am living or the habitat, right? ये तो basic है, I'm sure you know what this means. Micro habitat is अगर हम बिल्कुल किसी एक organism को डिटेल में देखें कि उसके around what conditions are there, that would be called a microhabitat. So the conditions and organisms in the immediate vicinity of a plant or animal, जो बिल्कुल उसके around है. So in my microhabitat would be right now this studio, right? This studio has no other living thing except me, or it has many living things like bacteria which I cannot see other than me, right? So this would be my microhabitat. This board will have many bacteria, so other living things, as well as the non-living things in the studio like this board, the light here, etc., etc. Okay, so this is a habitat. Now, as you can see, this is like if there is a rotting log in a forest and there is an ant here. So the ant's microhabitat is this log, and the entire forest will become its actual habitat. So microhabitat is at a very small level, habitat is at a slightly bigger level. Now habitat we have to differentiate from a term called niche. Now what is a niche? Niche refers to the unique role or position that a particular species plays in an ecosystem. अब देखो, एक तो मेरा habitat था, the place where I was living and staying. एक चीज है जो मैं वहां पे actually perform करता हूँ, right? The functional role that I play there, the function that I perform in that particular ecosystem, that function would be called a niche, right? What niche do I occupy? What particular function do I perform? That would be called a niche, right? Now, the unique role or position of a species within an ecosystem, including the physical and biological conditions in which it could survive, reproduce and perform its role, that would be called a niche. जैसे, for example, in HRC office, which is my habitat, my niche is teaching science and tech and environment. The unique function that I am doing here, the unique functional role that I perform here is science and tech and environment that nobody else can do, right? So that would be my niche. Now, it can be described by the specific set of environmental conditions, right? How can you describe a niche? The specific environmental conditions like temperature, humidity, light, soil, food, etc. that I require to survive. So I have certain requirements in my niche of science and tech and environment. So for that niche, I need certain temperature, humidity, light, soil, a board, some content. So this would be used to describe my niche, to tell me what unique functional role I am playing, not the physical occupation. जहां मैं रहता हूं वो तो habitat है, but जो unique function मैं कर रहा हूं, that is my niche. Now, the niche of an organism and its interactions are determined by where it stands in the ecological structure of an ecosystem. Ecosystem में जो structure है, उस structure में आप कहां placed हो, where you are placed in that structure of an ecosystem, that would define your niche. Now, इसका एक example देता हूं आपको. Habitat is the physical space that you are occupying, and niche is the functional space that you are occupying. The function that you are performing, the functional space that you are occupying, that would be a niche. Habitat would be the physical space that you are occupying, right? Okay. जैसे, let's talk of this tree, right? If I were to look at this tree, there would be many birds that are living here, right? So the tree and the birds that live here, the bird becomes the living thing living here. So the habitat of the birds would be the tree. If I talk of the habitat of the bird, the habitat would be the tree. Okay. But मान लो there are three birds. One bird takes the fruits and eats the fruits that are on the branches. Second bird does woodpecking on the trunk of the tree. And the third bird eats the fruits that have fallen down from the ground. So इनका जो niche हुआ, the functional space that they are performing are very different. Habitat तीनों का same है. It is the same tree. But the first bird is eating the fruits that are fallen down. The second bird is doing woodpecking, and the third bird is eating the fruits directly off the branches. So the niche of the three birds is different. The functional space occupied is different, but the habitat of all these birds is the same. That is how you differentiate a habitat and a niche. Habitat is the physical space that you occupy, and niche is the functional role that you perform in specific conditions. So yahan there are the specific functional role of eating these fruits, woodpecking, or eating these fruits. These are three different niches. Now, if we look at the types of niche, there are basically three types of niche. The first is the habitat niche. Habitat niche means that in this physical space, this entire physical space, which is your habitat, which particular place do you occupy? Do you occupy this place? Do you occupy this place or this place? Do you live here? Do you live here or do you live here? Or do you live here on top here? कौन सी स्पेस आप ऑक्यूपाई करते हो इन योर बिगर हैबिटेट, उसे हम कहते हैं हैबिटेट नीश. देन देयर इज अ ट्रोफिक नीश. Trophic niche talks about the trophic level that you are occupying. Trophic niche talks about the trophic level that you are occupying. What is a trophic level? It is basically whether you are producer, consumer, etc. And वो हम आज की क्लास में डिटेल में देखेंगे. So don't need to worry about that. Trophic niche, when we understand trophic levels, आपको समझ आ जाएगा. First thing was habitat niche, कि बड़े habitat में, जैसे एड सारथी के बड़े ऑफिस में, which is my habitat niche? The room that I have. If I have a room here, that would be my habitat niche. Trophic niche would depend on the function that I perform here. वो हम अभी देखेंगे. The unique functional role that I'm doing here of teaching science and tech and environment, that would become my trophic niche. And then there is a multi-dimensional niche. This is the third type of niche. Multi-dimensional niche is basically a combination of fundamental niche and realized niche. अब इन दो terms का meaning हम समझते हैं. What is multi-dimensional niche? A combination of fundamental and realized niche. Right. जैसे let's say that this was one tree and यहां पर सिर्फ एक ही bird था. Right. If there was just one bird here, forget these three, but मान लो there was this only one bird here और कोई competition नहीं था among the birds, तो एक bird पूरे tree के सारे fruits खा सकता था. So without any competition, without any interaction, the niche that you would occupy would be called your fundamental niche. So a fundamental niche is where an organism could exist without ecological interactions, without competition. If there were no interactions, no competition, where this bird could live, it could live on the entire tree. So its fundamental niche would be the entire tree. Now, what is the second thing? Realized niche. Population exists here in the presence of interaction and competition. Now on this tree, since there are three birds living, the red one has to specialize for this area, the yellow one has to specialize for this area, and the blue one has to specialize for this area. So the realized niche, the actual niche, because of the presence of competitions, is called the realized niche. But in case there was no competition present and they could freely live anywhere, that would be called a fundamental niche. So the fundamental niche of the bird here would be the whole tree, and the realized niche would be the specific elevation at which it lives. अगर कोई competition नहीं होता तो bird कहीं भी रह सकता था. But अब क्योंकि competition है, bird has to specialize to one particular place. This specialized thing is called its realized niche, and without the actual potential जहां वो रह सकता था, that is called its fundamental niche. So a niche is of three types. There is a habitat niche, we've done that. Trophic niche, we've done that. Multi-dimensional niche. Multi-dimensional niche is the combination of fundamental and realized niche. we've done this and we've done this also. So we've understood habitat and niche. अब देखो, if there is a niche overlap means एक ही time पे two people are occupying the same niche. If two organisms have the same niche, there is increased competition and less chances of survival. जैसे मान लो in this case there were three birds, एक ने ये वाला पार्ट ले रखा था, एक ने ये ले रखा था, एक ने ये ले रखा था. Now let's say that in this tree itself a fourth bird comes and it also wants to occupy this niche, this place. It also wants to eat the fruits that are living here. तो अब अगर this fourth bird, number 4, has come and it also wants to eat the fruits on this part, and this blue bird is already eating the fruits on this part, what will it lead to? It will lead to competition between these two people. It will lead to a conflict between these two people. अब दोनों के सर्वाइवल के चांसेस कम हो जाएंगे. Why? Because fruits तो लिमिटेड है. फ्रूट्स लिमिटेड है. पहले सिर्फ एक बर्ड था, अब दो बर्ड है on the same amount of fruits and seeds that are there. So the amount of fruits and seeds are the same, but the number of organisms competing for it have increased. So if there is a niche overlap, if two organisms are having the same niche, there is increased competition leading to less chances of survival. This fact that competition, high competition leads to less chances of survival is called the Gauss law or the competitive exclusion principle. Competitive exclusion principle means that competition in the case of the same niche of two species will lead to exclusion of one from that niche. Meaning, अगर एक ही niche पे दो species कहें कि हमें यहीं रहना है, यहीं पे function perform करना है, यहीं से खाना खाना है, it would lead to exclusion of one because competition बढ़ जाएगा. The resources of the ecosystem stay same, but the people that want to now use that resource has increased. So that would be a competitive exclusion, or that would lead to competition in that particular niche, and the survival chances of both will reduce. कैसे? यहाँ पे आप देखो, there is one bird that has come and this bird was already there. Number of fruits are the same, but the competition has become much more. This is what is called competitive exclusion, or that if you have the same niche, there is less survivability because of competition. इसका एक बहुत बढ़िया एग्जाम्पल इज डार्विन्स फिंचेस ऑन गैलापागोस आइलैंड्स. इसकी स्टोरी मैं आपको अभी बताता हूं. सो नीश ओवरलैप डिस्क्राइब्स द सिचुएशन इन विच co-occurring species share parts of their niche space with each other. Now overlapping niche, if there is an overlapping niche, it leads to competitive exclusion. Competitive exclusion means that two species are competing for the same limited resource, then they cannot continue to coexist at the constant population value. Means उनकी population मान लो एक species 500 population थी, second की भी 500 population थी, and now they have come together and they have started competing for limited resources. तो ये number 500 और 500 नहीं रह सकता. This number will reduce because of the competition. And I think this is pretty clear. The survivability will reduce, the competition will increase in this region. So the amount of population number has to decrease. This decrease will be what is called competitive exclusion. And how do people deal with that? How do species deal with that? They do resource partitioning. What they will do is they will move where exactly they want to eat from or what resource they want to consume. They will divide amongst themselves so that they don't keep competing for the same space. That is what is called resource partitioning. Process of moving things around in order to satisfy niche size to an appropriate level. Resource partitioning का example मैं आपको दिखाता हूं. This is just nothing but niche overlap. This is the example of Darwin's finches and resource partitioning, but this is a better example. जैसे मान लो all of these species that are there, species like flamingos, ducks, avocets, oyster catchers and plovers. These are things that live close to the beach, close to water ecosystems, but flamingos have occupied that particular niche, बिल्कुल bottom पे. Then you have ducks, then you have avocets, then oyster catchers and then plovers. तो इन्होंने अपनी niche जो resources ये occupy करते हैं उनको partition कर लिया, उनको divide कर लिया. Flamingo said I'll take the बिल्कुल bottom वाला part, duck said I'll take this part, avocet said I'll take this, oyster says I took this, and plover say I'll take this. So once they've divided the resources that they want to consume, that would be called resource partitioning. अब what did Charles Darwin see on Galapagos Island? This is important, right? What did Darwin see on Galapagos Islands? When he went to Galapagos Islands, he saw a species of birds called finch. Not Aaron Finch, but a species of bird called finch. Okay, he noticed कि ये सारे finches, इनकी beak shape में थोड़ा थोड़ा change था. Every finch had modified their beak a little bit, to take some different part of the tree. जैसे अगर ये एक ट्री है, तो जो फिंचेस थे उन्होंने अपनी बीक मॉडिफाइड कर ली थी कि कोई तो यहां से खाना खाता था, कोई यहां से खाना खाता था, कोई यहां से खाना खाता था, ताकि इनके आपस में कंपटीशन ना हो, ताकि इनका जो फंक्शनल रोल है वो ओवरलैप ना करे, ताकि देयर इज नो नीश ओवरलैप. सो दे हैड मॉडिफाइड देयर बीक्स अ लिटिल बिट टू अवॉइड नीश ओवरलैप. एंड अल्टीमेटली आफ्टर दिस मॉडिफिकेशन इतने डिफरेंसेस आ गए दैट दे बिकेम डिफरेंट स्पीशीज. सो व्हाट डार्विन सेड वाज that originally there was only one species of finch, okay, but then because its population was increasing, it started branching off into many different other species that had slightly modified beaks, that had different niche, and since they had different niche, now the competition was less. So he postulated that itni sari species ban gayi from one particular species in the span of human life, right? At the time when Darwin was alive, the idea of speciation or species formation was creationism. Creationism means that Bhagwan banata hai sare species, right? And whatever is made from up there. But Darwin demonstrated कि हमारे सामने सामने from one finch, see so many finches have formed. So this is a type of evolution. So this is how Darwin started making his book, our theory on evolution, and he wrote the book on the origin of species. Darwin की book का नाम है On the Origin of Species. So he wrote about how species originated. One of the ideas was this, comparative exclusion. And he said that it's not God that creates species, it is the conditions or the nature around us that creates species. Niche overlap and comparative exclusion. One of the examples is Darwin's finches. ये डिटेल में समझने की जरूरत नहीं है, जस्ट एन आइडिया दे रहा था, इसलिए आई हैव नॉट रिटन दिस इन द स्लाइड बिकॉज यू डोंट नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड इन डिटेल, यू जस्ट नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड देयर वाज वन फिंच एंड देन बिकॉज ऑफ द कंपटीशन इंक्रीजिंग, बिकॉज दे वांटेड डिफरेंट functional spaces or niches for each other, they branched into many species. So this led to Darwin's finches or many finches forming from one common ancestor. Right. I hope it's clear till here. I'll just see your comments. I hope it's going well. I'm not going too fast. I hope everything is understandable, and then we'll move forward to the idea of ecotone. वैभव आप प्रीलिम्स निकालो, उसके बाद बात करते हैं मीन्स की. आई एम हियर फॉर यू. Okay, good. Good that it's clear. All right. Now let's move on to ecotone. Ecotone क्या है? It is a zone of junction between two or more diverse ecosystems. जैसे कि मान लो कि there is on one side there is dry ecosystem and on the other side there is a wet ecosystem. So let's say here there is a lake and here there is land. तो बीच में यहाँ पे क्या होगा? यहाँ पे there would be marshland which is neither dry, right? So marshland would be neither completely dry neither completely wet. So it would be the middle between these two, right? जैसे mangrove forest होते हैं, mangrove forests are middle between terrestrial and marine ecosystems. Grasslands are the middle between desert and forest. Estuaries are the middle between salt water and fresh water. So this middle, this zone of junction between two diverse ecosystems is called the ecotone, right? जैसे mangroves के केस में क्या होता है? That on one side there is land and on one side there is marine ecosystem or salt water. मैंग्रोव्स ग्रो हियर, राइट, एट दिस बाउंड्री। तो उनका थोड़ा सा पार्ट आपको यहां दिखेगा, थोड़ा सा पार्ट यहां दिखेगा। सो दे आर अ पार्ट ऑफ व्हाट इज कॉल्ड इकोटोन। नाउ व्हाट वी हैव सीन इन दिस इकोटोन or this ecosystem, that is the transition region between two things, it has the characteristics, some characteristics of this ecosystem and some characteristics of these ecosystem। तो यहां पे होता क्या है कि जो स्पीशीज यहां सर्वाइव करते थे इस इकोसिस्टम में, वो भी यहां सर्वाइव कर पाते हैं, जो यहां सर्वाइव करते थे वो भी थोड़ा बहुत यहां सर्वाइव कर पाते हैं, एंड कुछ नए स्पीशीज भी बन जाते हैं जो स्पेशली इस इकोसिस्टम के लिए हैं। सो दिस प्लेस, this ecosystem, that is the boundary between two ecosystems, example marshland, mangrove, estuaries, these ecosystems are called ecotone and they have higher biodiversity, they have richness in biodiversity because of there is characteristics of ecosystem on that side, ecosystem on this side, and some specialized species here also, and this richness in biodiversity that is seen in ecotones is due to an effect called the edge effect. Since they are at the edge of two ecosystems, they have particular richness in biodiversity. This edge effect is what gives them the higher biodiversity. Okay, जैसे मान लो ecotone में this is the land ecosystem, this is the aquatic ecosystem, जो ये वाला part है where both of them are sort of meeting. Here you would see that land ecosystem के species would also come, aquatic ecosystem के species would also come, and some species specialized to this area would also come. So this particular place, this transitional region, this ecotone will have higher biodiversity due to an effect called edge effect. Okay. Now, so what are the characteristics of an ecotone? Since it is the transitional zone between both ecosystems on its side, on two different ecosystems के बीच का part है, it is called a zone of tension, right? It is called a zone of tension because दोनों साइड से different characters are coming together. Okay, it is linear as it shows progressive increase in species composition of one incoming community and decrease in species of other outgoing community. जैसे अगर हम इकोटोन पे देखें तो यहां तक there would be increase in the land and then decrease in the land, then यहां तक there would be increase in the aquatic and then decrease in the aquatic systems, aquatic species. बीच में in the exact center there would be a high height. So this is what the edge effect is. एक तरफ land के species would come and then finally start decreasing, then aquatic species would come and finally start decreasing. At the center there would be both aquatic and land species and certain special species also. So there is a linear distribution of species in this zone of tension where characteristics are coming from both sides. दोनों साइड के कैरेक्टरिस्टिक यहां आ रहे हैं, राइट? एंड अ वेल डेवलप्ड इकोटोन, अगर एक वेल डेवलप्ड इकोटोन होगा, some organisms that are entirely different from that of adjoining communities. जैसे मैंने आपको बताया, एक तरफ के स्पीशीज आ रहे हैं, दूसरी तरफ के स्पीशीज आ रहे हैं, एंड कुछ हैं जो यहां पर स्पेशल हैं, जो सिर्फ यहीं पर ही मिलते हैं. So that is why it has much higher biodiversity than both other sides, and this is why it is called, the effect is called the edge effect, because it's at the edge of both ecosystems. Okay, जैसे कोरल रीफ्स, ये चीज आपने बहुत सुनी होगी, और जब हम बायोडाइवर्सिटी पढ़ेंगे स्पीशीज, हम कोरल्स को डिटेल में कवर करेंगे. सो डोंट नीड टू कवर फ्रॉम ज्योग्राफी, आई विल कवर कोरल्स इन डिटेल विद यू. कोरल्स में क्या होता है? कोरल्स आर बेसिकली, दे आर मरीन एनिमल्स. ये एनिमल्स हैं सी के अंदर, राइट, दैट आर रिलीजिंग लाइमस्टोन और कैल्शियम कार्बोनेट. तो लाइमस्टोन ये रिलीज करते हैं सी के अंदर, आपने सुना होगा कोरल रीफ बन जाता है. देयर इज द ग्रेट बैरियर रीफ इन ऑस्ट्रेलिया, है ना? तो अब ये क्या है? दे आर फॉर्मिंग अ बैरियर लाइक दिस, राइट, और द कोरल्स आर फॉर्मिंग अ रीफ लाइक दिस. नाउ दिस इज लाइक अ टेरेस्ट्रियल थिंग, इट इज लाइक लैंड, and they are present in marine regions. So this limestone that they release, this reef that they form inside the sea sort of becomes like an ecotone, and that is why coral reefs is said कि coral reefs में बहुत ज्यादा biodiversity होती है. अगर corals की डेथ हो जाती है तो उसके आसपास उसमें जो species survive करते हैं उनकी भी डेथ हो जाती है, because they are the example of the edge effect happening in the sea. सिमिलर थिंग आपने वेटलैंड्स के बारे में सुना होगा. यू मस्ट हैव हर्ड अबाउट रामसर साइट्स और वेटलैंड्स. एंड ये क्यों इतने इंपॉर्टेंट है वेटलैंड्स? ये इसलिए इंपॉर्टेंट है बिकॉज दे आर सबमर्ज्ड विद वाटर, Okay, they are submerged with water, so they are midway between land and lakes. They are not completely dry. They are not completely like a lake. They are somewhere in the middle, where the depth is not that high. पानी भी है और land भी है. So they show this edge effect, and that is why wetlands are this important, because यहाँ पर बहुत ज़्यादा diversity है, and that is why there is a convention called the Ramsar Convention to protect wetlands. When we are reading international conventions, then we'll read the Ramsar Convention in detail. Okay, this Ramsar Convention is meant to protect from this Ramsar Convention is meant to protect wetlands that are under threat. Why are wetlands important? Because they are an example of ecotone. They are showing this edge effect. Okay, so edge effect refers to changes in population or community structure that occurs at the boundaries of two habitats. Sometimes the number of species or the population density of some species in the ecotone is much greater than those on either side. इधर से भी ज्यादा, aquatic से भी ज्यादा, land से भी ज्यादा, सब ज्यादा ecotone में है, बीच में है, because there are characteristics of both and some special species also, and this is called edge effect. अब जो special species हैं, एक तो aquatic species ही आ रहे थे, right? एक आ रहे थे आपके land species, and कुछ थे जो specially इसी region के लिए बने थे. These special species are what are called ecotypes. Type of species that are adapted to an ecotone. Type of species that are adapted to an ecotone, they are called ecotypes. Right? So edge effect, ecotone, ecotypes. These are related terms. जो specialized species सिर्फ उसी region के लिए हैं, they are called ecotypes. Right? अब हम edge effect को relate करते हैं from what we see in geography. ठीक है, यही पॉइंट है, एनवायरमेंट को ऐसे ही पढ़ना चाहिए, हम कंसेप्ट समझें फिर हम उसको रियल लाइफ में रिलेट करें. यहां पर क्या है, देयर इज द ग्रेट इंडियन प्लेन, गंगा का जो प्लेन है वो है, राइट. ऑन वन साइड देयर इज द ग्रेट इंडियन प्लेन, द यमुना गंगा प्लेन, राइट. ओके, ऑन द अदर साइड देयर आर द हिमालय, राइट. अगर आप इंडिया के मैप में नोटिस करो, आई एम टॉकिंग ऑफ दिस रीजन. I'm talking of this region here. इधर तो there is the plain, इधर there are the Himalayas. तो बीच में what do we have here? We have the Terai grassland. Now this Terai grassland is showing the feature of both plains on this side and Himalayas on that side. Because this Terai grassland is showing both features, what will it show? It will show edge effect. तो ये जो foothills हैं, the Terai, the Himalayan foothills, एक तरफ हिमालयन फुटहिल्स, एक तरफ प्लेन, उसके बीच में तराई ग्रासलैंड है. दिस इज अ एरिया ऑफ वेरी हाई बायोडाइवर्सिटी इन द इंडियन स्पेस. एंड यहीं पर आप देखोगे बहुत सारे नेशनल पार्क्स भी हैं, जैसे दुधवा नेशनल पार्क इन यूपी. इट हैज टाइगर्स एंड राइनोस बिकॉज इट लाइज इन द तराई रीजन. जब हम नेशनल पार्क पढ़ेंगे, देन यू विल ऑल्सो सी दैट व्हेन वी लुक एट द पेनिनसुलर पार्ट ऑफ इंडिया, यहां पर तमिलनाडु केरला की बाउंड्री पे, यहां पे देयर आर मेनी 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 नेशनल पार्क, राइट. 8-10 नेशनल पार्क तो यहीं पे ही हैं. अब यहां पर क्या है, वेस्टर्न घाट, और यहां बीच में क्या है, देयर आर प्लेन्स, राइट. रादर देयर इज द प्लेट्यू, देयर इज द डेक्कन ट्रैप्स, राइट. यहां पर देयर आर वेस्टर्न घाट्स एंड यहां पर देयर इज द प्लेट्यू. तो बीच में दिस एरिया इज अ ट्रांजिशनल जोन. फ्रॉम वेस्टर्न घाट वी आर ट्रांजिशनिंग इनटू प्लेट्यू. तो क्या हो रहा है, edge effect is developing. So that is why the species biodiversity in this region is very high. इधर वेस्टर्न घाट है और इस साइड पे what do we have? वेस्टर्न घाट के इस तरफ what do we have? We have the western coastal plains. So इधर भी biodiversity is very high because of the transition, and here also biodiversity is very high. So in this region when we read national parks, you will realize that many national parks and biosphere reserves are there. Why? Because this edge effect is leading to a lot of biodiversity in this region. तो जब हम वो पार्ट पढ़ें, don't forget these basic ecological concepts. Okay, now ecotype. What is ecotype? Ecotype is a population of species that differs genetically from other populations of the same species. What does it mean? एक species की ही sort of modification है. There are some genetic differences. Okay, there are some genetic differences. Now you know what this means. There are some genetic differences in an ecotype that make it different from other populations of the same species. Why? Because it is adapted, it is meant, it is programmed to live in the region where the edge effect is there, to live in the region which is a boundary between two ecosystems, right? So because of the unique local conditions that are there, it has certain unique characters, certain unique genetic features. For example, the Royal Bengal tiger, it is a tiger, right? If you compare the species, it is a tiger, but it has certain unique genetic features. Why are they there? They are there because it is an ecotype. Where is it adapted to live? It is adapted to live in the mangroves. So it can drink salt water, something that is not found in other tigers. Now ये क्यों हो रहा है? Because it is an ecotype that is adapted to live in the region where there is the edge effect. What is edge effect? One ecosystem and two ecosystem. The middle part where there are some special species also, that they are called ecotypes, right? I hope this much is clear. Now, यहाँ पे थोड़े examples दिए ecotype के. You can just read from the slide. I explain the concept to you. Okay. Now coming back to what were the functions of an ecosystem. There was productivity, there was energy flow, there was decomposition, and there was nutrient cycling. हमने ये 4 functions पढ़े थे in an ecosystem, that it would do these 4 functions, right? Food would be produced, then food would be passed from one place to the other. जो organisms food ले लेंगे, they would die. उनकी bodies को decompose करना है, और bodies decompose करके वापस nutrients को cycle करना है. Nutrients like phosphorus, like nitrogen, like carbon, like sulfur. अब हम इन चारों चीजों को समझते हैं, right? मैंने आपको बोला था I will explain trophic niche to you when we come to it. So now we have finally come to it. A trophic level is the representation of energy flow in an ecosystem. Ecosystem में energy flow is happening, energy is going from one place to the next. तो जो levels of energy flow हैं उनको हम कहते हैं trophic level, right? Trophic levels show the levels of energy flow. It is a position that is occupied in the food chain. Energy flow कैसे होता है? Energy flow is by eating. If I eat chicken, energy has flown from the ecosystem, from my surrounding, which has the chicken, into my body. If the chicken eats grass, energy flow has taken place from the grass to the chicken, right? So trophic levels deal with how the members of an ecosystem are connected based on their nutritional needs. Nutrition is what? Nutrition is basically eating food. So how my nutritional needs are connected to things that are there in my ecosystem, that is a trophic level. So now the trophic level interactions can be seen through 3 concepts: food chain, food web, or ecological pyramid. Now we will understand all 3 of this. ठीक है? Trophic levels की interaction can be seen as 3 components: food chain, food web, and ecological pyramid. What are trophic levels? They show energy flow in the ecosystem, right? So सबसे पहले you need to understand 2 processes: photosynthesis and respiration. पहले मैं आपको ये 2 processes समझा देता हूं ताकि आगे की प्रॉब्लम ना हो. The first process is photosynthesis. I have taught you the technique of word breakdown. वैसे तो it's not possible that you have not heard this before, but if you haven't, just do word breakdown. Photo या photon हमने पढ़ा था is related to light, and synthesis means production. Synthesis मतलब बनाना. तो लाइट से फूड बनाना, that would be what is photosynthesis. So in photosynthesis what happens is that a plant uses carbon dioxide and water along with light from the sun to produce C6H12O6 or glucose or energy or sugar along with oxygen. This is the process of photosynthesis, where you are using carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, water from the soil, light from the sun to produce C6H12O6, also known as glucose, with oxygen. अब ये light use करने के लिए there is something called chlorophyll in plants. Now what you have to remember, you have to tell me where in the plant cell the chlorophyll is located. आपकी साइंस एंड टेक देखते हैं आपको कितनी याद है. Where in the plant cell is the chlorophyll located? This you tell me in the comments. ठीक है? So using the chlorophyll, it absorbs the light and does this reaction. This is the reaction of photosynthesis. There is a second reaction of respiration. Respiration is basically when you use glucose, like when my body eats glucose, it takes oxygen, right? And it then produces carbon dioxide, it produces water, and it produces energy. sorry, and it produces energy. So using the glucose that I have eaten or the food that I have eaten along with the oxygen, ये मैं आपको पहले भी समझा चुका हूं that when we are breathing, oxygen comes into our lungs, goes to our blood, then blood carries oxygen to all cells of the body. Then in a certain part of the body, that oxygen is utilized, or a certain part of the cell that oxygen is utilized to produce energy. That part of the cell is called the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell, which then produces energy along with carbon dioxide and water. अब ये कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड हम एक्सहेल कर देते हैं. तो दो प्रोसेसेस हो रही हैं किसी भी इकोसिस्टम में. वन इज फोटोसिंथेसिस एंड वन इज रेस्पिरेशन. फोटोसिंथेसिस में क्या है? फोटोसिंथेसिस में प्लांट्स आर यूजिंग द energy given from the sun to produce food. Now what you have to tell me is, are plants also doing respiration? Are plants also doing respiration? Yes or no? Plants are doing photosynthesis, animals are doing respiration. इतना तो हमें क्लियर है. बट क्या प्लांट्स भी रेस्पिरेशन करते हैं? This you have to tell me, yes or no. Chloroplast is the right answer. Good. Good. Plants also do respiration. यार फोटोसिंथेसिस से तो they have just produced food. उन्हें भी तो एनर्जी चाहिए, उन्हें भी तो और काम करने हैं, right? They also have to make their leaves grow. They also need energy, right? Plants also need energy. They have to move water from one part to the other part of the body, right? So their functions, उनके सेलुलर फंक्शन कैसे होंगे if they don't do respiration? Plant cell में भी तो माइटोकॉन्ड्रिया था. If plants weren't doing respiration, what was the mitochondria doing in the plant cell? Right? Plants also do respiration and also do photosynthesis. Animals, on the other hand, only do respiration. Animals cannot do photosynthesis. अब photosynthesis का rule क्या है? When you are seeing energy in the ecosystem, what is the rule of photosynthesis? That whatever sunlight energy is given to a plant, let's say 1000 joules of energy is given to a plant through sunlight. Joule is the unit of energy. If 1000 joules is given to the plant can merely absorb 10 joules or only 1%. Plant can absorb less than 1% rather than, मतलब 1% हम मानते हैं, but plants can absorb less than 1% of the sunlight that is reaching them. So if 1000 joules of energy from the sun is reaching the plant, they can absorb only 1%. Still, they are able to make 170 billion metric tons of food each year. That means sun की एनर्जी बहुत बहुत ज्यादा है, उसका 1% भी इतना है, right? So this is the first thing in the ecosystem, the energy that is absorbed from the sun for the process of photosynthesis. Now, in a ecosystem, there is, अब इकोसिस्टम में हम एनर्जी फ्लो देख रहे हैं. अब कोई तो एनर्जी पहले प्रोड्यूस करेगा, अपने आप से तो एनर्जी है नहीं. Somebody has to produce this energy. This production of energy are called the primary producers in the ecosystem, or they are called autotrophs. अब troph क्या था? Trophic level that shows energy. Auto means on their own or automatically. So if you break down the word, you will see the word autotrophs. Word breakdown works in environment also or any other technical subject. Autotrophs, that means producing the energy themselves, relying on themselves for their trophic level. They are primary producers. So primary producers are basically green plants and certain bacteria and algae. इनकी बात हम करेंगे. They are basically green plants that can synthesize carbohydrates from simple inorganic raw materials like carbon dioxide and water in the presence of chlorophyll with the use of sunlight through the process of photosynthesis. What are they doing? वो sunlight की presence में chlorophyll को use करके carbon dioxide and water से energy produce करते हैं, and that leads to photosynthesis, and they are called primary producers because they are producing the energy in an ecosystem called autotrophs. कितनी energy? 1% of what they get from the sun. In terrestrial ecosystem, in an ecosystem on land, producers are basically herbaceous and woody plants, while in aquatic systems, they are a various species of microscopic algae. Algae are also types of plants. Right. Now, producers or primary producers can be phototrophs or chemotrophs. Phototrophs तो हमने देख लिया. Phototroph क्या है? they are using the photons or the sunlight energy to produce food. So carbon dioxide plus water plus sunlight gives sugar and oxygen. This is phototroph. Okay, now there are chemotroph. Chemotroph क्या करते हैं? Chemotroph they are also producing food, right? Similar काम है food produce करने का, but नाम में देखो क्या लिखा है? Chemotroph. So they are not using the light energy from the sun. They are doing certain chemical reactions to obtain their food. इसका example है certain sulfur bacteria. There are many bacteria that are chemotroph. One example is sulfur bacteria. तो ये क्या करते हैं? They take carbon dioxide and water along with hydrogen sulfide. Hydrogen sulfide gas they take from the atmosphere and oxygen. They don't use any particular light or sunlight. They still produce carbohydrates and sulfuric acid. So they take carbon dioxide, they take water, they take hydrogen sulfide, they take oxygen, and with that, with the help of certain chemical reactions, they produce carbohydrates and sulfuric acid. This process so far has only been seen in bacteria, and they are therefore called chemotrophs. They are still producing their own food, right? They are producing their own food, not with the help of light though. How are they doing it? They are doing it with chemical reactions. So chemotrophs. These are both the examples of primary producers in an ecosystem. The first reaction happens here in an ecosystem. This is the first place where the energy is produced. And since they are producers, they will be called primary producers or autotrophs, right? Autotroph क्या होता है? They produce their own food. They could be chemotrophs or they could be phototrophs. Second thing is heterotroph. Hetero means other. So when they rely on others for their energy, word breakdown, rely on others for their energy, they would be called heterotroph. They are consumers. They eat the people that are producing energy, right? Consumers or heterotrophs, they are incapable of producing their own food through photosynthesis. They depend on organic food derived from plants, animals, or both, right? Now they can be divided into various other groups. Let's see those. तो पहला ग्रुप है आपका प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर. प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर क्या है? दे आर द वंस दैट आर ईटिंग द प्राइमरी प्रोड्यूसर्स, जो ग्रास खाते हैं, राइट? इस तरह के एनिमल्स क्या हुए? प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर. देन देयर आर सेकेंडरी कंज्यूमर. सेकेंडरी कंज्यूमर आर दोज दैट ईट द प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर. मान लो सबसे पहले देयर वाज ग्रास. ग्रास को खाया ग्रास हॉपर ने. ग्रास हॉपर बिकम्स द प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर. ग्रास हॉपर को खाया स्पॉटेड फ्रॉग ने. अगर स्पॉटेड फ्रॉग ने खाया ग्रास हॉपर को तो स्पॉटेड फ्रॉग बिकम्स द सेकेंडरी कंज्यूमर. अब स्पॉटेड फ्रॉग को खाता है रेड टेल्ड हॉक. हॉक मींस ईगल. So red-tailed hawk now eats the spotted frog. So it becomes the tertiary consumer. So primary producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer. Okay. All of this would be an example of how a food chain works. There are primary producer, then primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer. Okay. These are various levels or trophic levels in an ecosystem. So इन्हें हम कहते हैं मैक्रो कंज्यूमर. मैक्रो कंज्यूमर मींस जो बड़ी चीजें खाते हैं. ये सारे प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर, सेकेंडरी कंज्यूमर, टर्शियरी कंज्यूमर, दीज आर मैक्रो कंज्यूमर्स बिकॉज ये जो चीजें खाते हैं हमें दिख रही हैं. दे आर बिग थिंग्स, राइट? सो दे फीड ऑन प्लांट्स और एनिमल्स और बोथ आर कैटेगराइज्ड ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ देयर फूड सोर्सेस. दे कैन बी हर्बीवोर्स और प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर्स विच आर ईटिंग मेनली द प्लांट्स और द प्राइमरी प्रोड्यूसर. जो प्राइमरी प्रोड्यूसर को खाया जिसने, वो प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर या हर्बीवोर. इस हर्बीवोर को जिसने खाया वो सेकेंडरी कंज्यूमर्स. देन देयर आर कार्निवोर्स विच फीड ऑन सेकेंडरी कंज्यूमर. अगेन एग्जांपल देखो, काउ इज अ हर्बीवोर और अ प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर बिकॉज इट ईट्स ग्रास. अ वुल्फ वुड बी अ सेकेंडरी कंज्यूमर बिकॉज इट ईट्स द काउ. अ कार्निवोर वुड बी अ सेकेंडरी कंज्यूमर विच ईट्स द वुल्फ, जैसे लायन कैन ईट द वुल्फ. नाउ ऑब्वियसली देयर आर पीपल that could fit in many places. जैसे humans could be herbivores. We can eat primary producers themselves. हम plants भी खाते हैं. We could be primary consumers also. We could be secondary consumers also. We could be tertiary consumers also. So we could be called omnivores because we are eating both plants and animals. Omni means all. जहां भी आपको omni word दिखे, it means all. So omniscient, present everywhere means God. Omnivores, things that can eat everything, like both plants and animals. So that would be an omnivore, like humans. Now, अब देखो अब क्या हुआ, प्लांट ने एनर्जी बनाई, फर्स्ट ईटन बाय अ काउ, काउ इज ईटन बाय अ वुल्फ, एंड लेट्स से अ वुल्फ इज ईटन बाय अ लायन. तो यहां तक तो चल रहा था, बट नाउ हु ईट्स द लायन, राइट? ऐसे तो लायंस की पॉपुलेशन बढ़ती ही जाएगी. Now there is nobody to eat the lion. What happens to the lion we'll see. But when the lion dies naturally, or let's say a human kills it, or any other part of the food chain, wherever someone dies, what is happening? They are going to leave some dead bodies. अब इन dead bodies को कौन खाता है? Let's see that. इन dead bodies को जो खाते हैं उन्हें हम कहते हैं scavengers. जैसे हमने देखा है vultures को, जैसे हमने देखा है eagles को, hawks को, they are scavengers. They eat this dead and decaying matter. Okay, so scavengers will feed on carrion, dead or injured animal corpses. अगर आप lion को देखो, अगर उसे कोई dead lying चीज दिख जाए, वो कभी उसको नहीं खाएगा. It will always hunt and eat, right? But a scavenger will feed on something that is lying there that is dead. So a scavenger will feed on carrion or dead or injured parts, right? Now scavengers will feed on these dead plants and animals, and decomposers will finish the job. What are decomposers? We'll see. But scavengers पहले आप यहां देख लो. These are the examples of scavengers: crow, hyena, fox, jackal, possum, wasp, vulture, seagulls. ये सारे क्या examples हैं? These are examples of scavengers. Things that will eat dead and decaying matter. तो ये क्या हुए? Scavenger. अच्छा, अब dead and decaying matter तो तुमने खा लिया, बट स्टिल बिल्कुल पूरी तरह तो वो खत्म नहीं होगा. एंड आप याद करो, इन द फंक्शंस ऑफ एन इकोसिस्टम हमने वहां से न्यूट्रिएंट्स भी निकालने थे. वी हैड टू टेक द न्यूट्रिएंट्स बैक एंड पुट देम इन द सॉइल, राइट? वो काम करते हैं आपके माइक्रो कंज्यूमर्स दैट कैन बी क्लासिफाइड फर्दर इनटू डीकंपोजर्स एंड डिट्रिटिवोर्स. लेट्स सी. तो माइक्रो कंज्यूमर्स क्या हैं? जो ये छोटी चीजें खाते हैं. स्कैवेंजर ने एक बार सब कुछ खा लिया, उसके बाद आफ्टर द स्कैवेंजर हैज ईटन एवरीथिंग, after that also some micro bits will be left. So bacteria and fungi and some other organisms that are eating this micro remaining stuff are micro consumers. They feed on small microscopic bits of dead organic matter and convert them into inorganic nutrients. They are called decomposers and detritivores. इनका क्या काम है? जो बच गया स्कैवेंजर के खाने के बाद, उसको they will break down into inorganic things. The products of decomposition, such as inorganic nutrients, which are released in the ecosystem. Once you release these inorganic nutrients after breaking down these micro bits, then these inorganic nutrients will be used by producers again. तो फिर से ये recycle हो जाएंगे. जैसे मान लो this was a plant, right? इसने soil से कुछ nutrients लिए होंगे, right? It must have taken ammonia, it must have taken nitrogen, etc. from the soil. Then it would have been eaten, let's say, by a cow, cow eaten by a wolf, wolf eaten by a lion. The lion then died. So after the lion died, it was eaten by a vulture, right? Still some part of the lion's body was left, right? अब decomposers इस पे act करेंगे and it will break down its body into these itself nutrients, which would then cycle back and then again be taken up by the next plant. This is the cycle or the nutrient cycling in an ecosystem. ये भी हम पढ़ेंगे when we read nitrogen cycle, water cycle, phosphorus cycle, sulfur cycle. We'll read all of these processes, right? But ये जो काम यहाँ पे हो रहा है, after the vulture or the scavenger has eaten, और जो छोटे छोटे parts रह गए हैं, इनको खाने का जो काम हो रहा है, this is being done by decomposers and detritivores. अब ये जो decomposers and detritivores हैं, इनमें क्या difference है? इनमें difference basically ये है कि जो detritivores हैं, they are also doing the same job, but they are doing it through the normal process of digestion. जैसे हम करते हैं. Detritivores क्या करते हैं? They will eat something and then they will release in their excreta, through the process of excretion, they will release some inorganic chemicals that will be added to the soil. इसका बेस्ट एग्जाम्पल है अर्थवॉर्म. अर्थवॉर्म आपने देखा होगा, वो डेड एंड डिकेइंग मैटर खाता है and then it releases certain inorganic compounds that are said to be very good for the soil. तभी earthworm को हम कहते हैं it is a farmer's friend. So things like millipedes, flies, worms, these are detritivores. What are decomposers? They are also doing the same job, but they are not doing it through the process of digestion. They are using chemicals. Okay, they are using chemicals. तो वो chemical release करके उनको break down करते हैं. Digestion would be eating it, digesting it, then excreting it, passing excreta or feces, and the feces have certain nutrients जो soil में चले जाएं. That would be detritivore. और detritus क्या होता है? Detritus means dead matter, decaying matter, and feces. So they consume feces, they consume dead and decaying matter, they digest it, then they release the excreta, and that excreta has certain compounds. So that would be detritivore. इसने करा तो nutrient cycling it, but he did it through the process of digestion. A decomposer would be that you would just release chemicals. यहाँ पे कुछ पड़ा है छोटा माइक्रो पार्ट, इसके पास आए, इसके ऊपर chemicals रिलीज किए, and this would then form into certain nutrients. तो ये जो detritivores हैं, इनका एग्जाम्पल क्या है? डाइजेशन करने वालों का अर्थवॉर्म, मिलीपीड, क्रैब. जो डीकंपोजर है इनका एग्जाम्पल क्या है? बैक्टीरिया, फंगाई, सर्टेन इंसेक्ट्स. But they are mainly bacteria and fungi. They will grow, they will release certain chemicals and decompose things. आपने अगर ब्रेड पे देखा हो, ब्रेड पे जब फंगस उग जाता है, it starts to smell because the fungus has released certain enzymes that is breaking down the bread. It is decomposing the bread. So these are decomposers and detritivores. Now, ये example है आपके detritivores के, right? Earthworm, dung flies, wood lice. Certain fungi are also detritivores. Certain fungi are decomposers also. ओके, अब इधर एक्वेटिक इकोसिस्टम, मान लो हम देख रहे हैं एक एक्वेटिक इकोसिस्टम को, एक सी को या एक लेक को. तो यहां पे क्या होगा? एक्वेटिक इकोसिस्टम में भी कुछ प्लांट्स होते हैं, बट क्योंकि सनलाइट जो है वो उतने नीचे तक नहीं जाती है, तो इन द एक्वेटिक इकोसिस्टम द प्रोड्यूसर्स, दे आर नॉट ग्रीन प्लांट्स लाइक ट्रीज, देयर आर नो ट्रीज इनसाइड द सी. वहां पे किस टाइप के प्रोड्यूसर्स होते हैं? देयर आर ब्लू ग्रीन एल्गे और साइनोबैक्टीरिया. They are actually single-celled bacteria, but they are called blue-green algae because of how they look in a microscope. There are obviously normal algae. आपने देखा होगा river के ऊपर algae grow कर रहा होता है, right? That is there. Then there are phytoplankton. Phytoplankton is also a type of sea algae. Again, it does the process of photosynthesis. So you can see the word phyto here inside the sea. Then there are diatoms. Diatoms are also a type of algae that are doing the process of photosynthesis and getting energy. Then there are primary consumers. Primary consumers will be things that eat this. तो इसका सबसे मेजर एग्जांपल है zooplankton. Zooplankton or zoo stands for small microscopic organisms in the sea that eat phytoplankton. Phytoplankton are microscopic organisms that produce energy through the process of photosynthesis, and zooplankton would then eat the phytoplankton. There are also crustaceans. There are also small fish. Then there are secondary consumers. Secondary consumers mein there will be bigger fish, herrings, sharks, etc. So this is how it works in an aquatic ecosystem. Again, producers, primary consumers, secondary consumers. Then after secondary consumers, there can be carnivores like the great white shark, for example. Then again it would go back to, they would die, they would get decomposed. अब यहाँ पर जब decomposition होती है, it requires oxygen. So you might have heard this term called biological oxygen demand. ये भी हम पढ़ेंगे when we are reading pollution. Biological oxygen demand is amount of oxygen required to break down to decompose the dead matter in the sea. That how much oxygen is required by the bacteria to break down the dead matter in the sea. यहाँ पे मैं आपको ये concept नहीं बता रहा हूँ. I'm just telling you that bacteria is playing the role of a decomposer, and this is why this idea of BOD is there. Okay. अब हमने समझ लिया trophic levels. Trophic levels could be producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, etc. etc. अब इसकी sequence अगर हम बना दें, if I draw a sequence of this trophic level, that sequence would be called a food chain. Okay, so a food chain is a sequence of organisms that feed on one another from forming a food chain. Right? It is the process of transfer of food energy from green plants, which are producers. Green plants ने produce करी energy from the sun, so green plants transferred the energy from themselves. Green plants से transfer हो रही है to primary consumers, then secondary consumers through a series of organisms with repeated eating and being eaten. The cow is eating the plant and being eaten by the wolf. So this link of being eaten and eating is called a food chain. So arrows in a food chain, अगर मैं food chain को ऐसे बना रहा हूं, the arrows in a food chain represent the flow of energy through the process of eating. And food chains are shown like this: A eats B, A is eaten by B, B is eaten by C, C is eaten by D. So the flow of energy here is unidirectional. इधर तो कोई energy flow नहीं हो रही ऐसे. So there is unidimensional or unidirectional flow of energy in a food chain. एक ही direction में चल रहा है सब कुछ, right? That is a food chain. जैसे कि this is a grazing food chain. Leaves or cabbage are eaten by caterpillar and caterpillar is eaten by thrush. Thrush is a type of bird, right? So this is a grazing food chain. Or you have detritus food chain. Detritus or dead or organic decaying matter is eaten by a earthworm. Earthworm is eaten by a rat, right? So this is called a detritus food chain, right? Detritus eaten by primary detritus feeder or an earthworm. Primary detritus feeder eaten by a secondary detritus feeder or a rat. So this would be food chain, unidirectional flow of energy. Arrow shows who eats who, or flow of energy. The second concept is a food web. Now a food web is a diagram or a model that shows the interdependence of various organisms in the ecosystem, showing the flow of energy and nutrients, right? So it shows interdependence or the flow of energy from one place to another, and it shows it in a multi-directional manner, right? Feeding relationships among different species, right? It is not linear. It is not like this. This is not what a food web shows. It is multi-dimensional. So it looks something like this, right? Multiple dimensions, and this is the more accurate representation. Because oak tree को beetle खा सकता है, quail खा सकता है, mouse खा सकता है. Mouse can directly be eaten by fox. Mouse can be eaten by frog. That can be eaten by fox. Mouse can be eaten by a small bird. That can then be later eaten by something else. And then mouse could also directly be eaten by wolf. So there is a multi-dimensional relationship, multi-directional relationship. यहाँ पे किसी की भी डेथ हो सकती है, right? Let's say यहाँ पे squirrel eats from an oak tree and dies. So directly यहाँ पे decomposers and detritivores could get involved also, right? Or the squirrel could be further eaten by a bird. Squirrel could also directly be eaten by a fox. So this multi-dimensional relationship where all the links are established is a food web. A food chain is much simpler. Food chain is just one to the other to the other. Food web is a much better representation. So it is non-linear. It is not just like this. Food web could go in multiple directions. It could be this direction, then this direction, like this it could be flowing. So any way the energy could be flowing. So it is a multi-dimensional representation of energy flow. And there is complexity in a food web. As you can see here, it's fairly complex. It's not in one line. And जितना ज़्यादा number of species होंगे, जितने ज़्यादा number of species होंगे, the greater will be the interactions, right? जितने ज़्यादा species, उतनी ज़्यादा interactions, और उतना ज़्यादा ही ये हम कहेंगे कि ये food web stable है. The more the species, the more the biodiversity, the more I will say that this food web is stable. Now you have to tell me, why does more interaction mean that there is more stability? Why? Why does more interaction mean more stability? ऐसा क्या है? Why do I want even more species to be present here? Why would that be called more stability? Tell me that in the comments. Okay, I'll give you a 5-minute break and I'll discuss the rest. I'll discuss this question after the break. Till then you can think why more interaction means more stability. 5 minutes break for you on public demand. Okay, so the question was, why is this more interaction leading to more stability? देखो यार, अगर मान लो यहां पर ये पर्टिकुलर स्पीशीज एक्सटिंक्ट हो जाए फॉर सम रीजन, राइट, इवन देन द हॉक हैज टू अदर सोर्सेज टू फीड इट, राइट. अगर ये स्पीशीज यहां पे एक्सटिंक्ट हो जाए, even then the fox has two other sources to feed it. So the stability is high because the number of interactions are high. Even if there is extinction or removal of one thing from the food web, there will not be death of other species. But in a food chain, what was happening was, food chain is simply this. It's simply this, A to B to C. Now if B becomes extinct, C will also become extinct because C cannot eat anything else. अगर unidimensional interaction है, then the stability is less because every particular species depends on the other one. But in a food web, there are multiple options. So if there are multiple options, even after extinction, the likelihood of one species becoming dead is less, becoming extinct is less, because it will have other options also if one particular species goes away. So this is more stable. Now what is a food web collapse? Food web collapse occurs when the interconnected food chain of an ecosystem breaks down or fail to function in a sustainable manner. वो interconnected food chains, ये जो इतनी सारी food chains जब आपस में interconnect हो गई, इसे ही हम food web कहते हैं. अब मान लो इतनी सारी extinction हो जाए या इतना climate change हो जाए, loss of इतने सारे species हो जाए, that this food web stops to function sustainably. This would be called a food web collapse. And this can happen due to a number of factors such as change in the climate, loss of key species, pollution, and overexploitation by humans. So a food web collapse can have serious consequences for the entire ecosystem, including loss of biodiversity, reduced productivity, and even collapse of the entire ecosystem. क्यों पढ़ा रहा हूं food web collapse? I am teaching it because Down to Earth had two very recent articles that climate change could drive coastal food webs to collapse, and that children born today will see literally thousands of animals disappear as global food webs collapse. So this term food web collapse is in the news. So इसीलिए I thought I'd just teach you this idea, ताकि मान लो if they ask you in UPSC, you have a basic idea that food web collapse means that इतना ज़्यादा collapse हो जाए that even this interconnected food chain stops to function properly. Okay, now next हमने क्या देखा था, that when we were studying trophic levels, we saw कि तीन तरह से इनको represent किया जा सकता है. One was a food chain, this we have seen. Second was a food web, this we have seen. Third was the ecological pyramid. So now let us see what ecological pyramids are. Okay, ecological pyramids are graphical representations of trophic levels within an ecosystem. जो trophic levels हैं उनको अगर मैं graphically represent करूं, उनके नंबर्स शो करूं, उनका बायोमास शो करूं, एनर्जी लेवल्स शो करूं, so that would be a ecological pyramid if I am showing the graphical representation. So they show the relative abundance or biomass of different groups at each trophic level. Trophic means energy level and how they are interacting based on their nutritional needs and the flow of energy and nutrients through a food chain. So अगर मैं उसको graphically in a pyramid show करूं, तो that would form an ecological pyramid. Now, ecological pyramids are of three types. There are of three types. One is energy, one is biomass, and one is number. इनको हम डिटेल में समझते हैं. But before that, we have to understand a law called a law of 10% given by a person called Raymond Lindman. Now, what did Professor Raymond Lindman say? He said that from one trophic level to another, only biomass will get transferred. What is biomass? जैसे the amount of energy that you have stored. देखो, मैंने photosynthesis करके या एक plant ने photosynthesis करके food बनाया, but plant also was doing respiration, right? So a plant does photosynthesis to make food. Plant did photosynthesis and made food, but plant was also doing respiration, right? So कुछ food plant ने respiration में use करके energy produce कर ली. Some of the food it's stored in the form of a fruit. ये जो stored food है in the form of a fruit, only this is available to an animal that eats it, not the amount of food that was originally produced. Originally इसने कितना भी food produce किया हो, but the amount that is available to you is only what has been stored as biomass. What it has spent in respiration, वो वाली energy spend हो गई, वो वाला food spend हो गया. So the only energy that is available is that is stored as biomass. Mass means, mass तो आपको पता है, and biomass means living. So what is living storage of weight, living storage of food in, let's say, fruits or vegetables or meat, वहां पर जो स्टोरेज हो रही है, only that is available to the next trophic level, not the entire energy form, because even the plant was doing the process of respiration. उसने अगर इतने 100 joules की एनर्जी प्रोड्यूस करी फ्रॉम द सन, 90 joules वो लगा देगा अपनी रेस्पिरेशन में. It can only store 10%. So he gave a law of 10% that only the energy that gets converted to biomass is available, and when all the energy losses are added, energy जो उसने प्रोड्यूस करी, सन से उसने एनर्जी ली, फूड में उस एनर्जी को डाला, but when the energy losses are added, only 10% of the energy entering one trophic level is available to the next trophic level, because only 10% of the energy obtained is used to make biomass. This use of only 10% of the energy is called the 10% law. This 10% of the energy, that only 10% energy in a trophic level is available to the next trophic level, this is called the 10% law. This 10% law was given by Professor Raymond Lindman. Now he said that because of the 10% law, a food chain can have only 5 or less links. Why? Because मान लो यहाँ पे at A, whatever the energy was there, this would be 0.1 of X in the second level, then it would be 0.01, then it would be 0.001, क्योंकि सिर्फ पहले केस में इसका 10% जा रहा है, सेकंड केस में इसका 10%, थर्ड केस में इसका 10%, फोर्थ केस में इसका 10%. सो आफ्टर 5 लिंक्स एनर्जी इतनी है ही नहीं कि the food chain can carry on. So because of this 10% law, most food chains will have only 5 or less chains, 5 or less links, and because 90% of the energy is lost at each level, the amount of energy available at the next trophic level is lost very quickly. यहाँ एक प्लांट था, इसने सनलाइट से 1% एनर्जी लेके एनर्जी बनाई, उसमें से सिर्फ 10% को ही इसने बायोमास की तरह स्टोर किया. ओनली दिस वाज अवेलेबल टू द नेक्स्ट लेवल, देन ओनली 10% ऑफ व्हाट दिस हैड इज अवेलेबल टू द नेक्स्ट लेवल. तो एक लेवल से ज्यादा यू कैन नॉट हैव पीपल इन अ फूड चेन, राइट? एंड व्हाई इज दिस एनर्जी लॉस हैपनिंग? Most of this energy loss is in the production of heat energy, respiration in mitochondria, and movement, right? Since I am moving right now, so the energy that I have obtained, I am spending. I am not using this energy to make fat. So if a lion eats me, it will only get the energy that my body has stored as fat, not what I am doing right now, because ये energy तो मैंने spend कर दी. So it will only get 10%, and this is the law of 10%. तो अगर there were 1 million joules of sunlight, plant would get how much? Only 1%, 10,000 joules. Then 10,000 joules से primary consumer would get only 1%, 1,000 joules. Secondary consumer would get 100 joules. Tertiary consumer will get 10 joules. अब देखो, this chain already has 4 links. अब fifth link आता तो उसको सिर्फ 1 joule energy मिलती. So that is why most food chains cannot have more than 5 links, because of this law of 10% given by Raymond Lindman. Now let us study the ecological pyramids. They could be pyramid of numbers, they could be pyramids of biomass, or pyramids of energy. And remember, what are these? These are graphical representations. These are graphical representations of the trophic levels. जो trophic levels थे, उनके graphical representation है ये pyramids, ecological pyramids. Okay. Now, they are graphical representation of the trophic levels. They show the relative abundance or biomass of different groups of organisms at each trophic level. ये भी बात हम देख चुके हैं. They also show the flow that is happening through the food chain. वो flow भी हम देख लेंगे because it is graphically represented, and they show the relative abundance. अब देखो, पहला है pyramid of energy. Pyramid of energy क्या दिखाएगा कि किस ट्रॉफिक लेवल पे, जैसा फर्स्ट ट्रॉफिक लेवल क्या है? The first trophic level is the level of the primary consumer, primary producer. Then there is primary consumer. Then there is secondary consumer, तो पिरामिड ऑफ एनर्जी दिखाएगा कि हर ट्रॉफिक लेवल पे कितना एनर्जी प्रेजेंट है इन एन इकोसिस्टम, दैट एट द लेवल ऑफ प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर दिस मच एनर्जी इज प्रेजेंट, एट द लेवल ऑफ प्राइमरी प्रोड्यूसर दिस मच एनर्जी इज प्रेजेंट। तो ये जो हमने यहां पे बनाया था, दिस इज नथिंग बट अ पिरामिड ऑफ एनर्जी। It is showing that at the level of primary producers in this ecosystem there are 10,000 joules. At the level of primary consumers there are 1,000 joules. At the level of secondary consumer there is 100 joule. At the level of tertiary consumer there is 10 joule. तो ये एक pyramid ही तो है. This pyramid of energy is shows graphically the amount of energy present at all levels, right? So this is the pyramid of energy. अब pyramid of energy की सीधी सी बात ये है that it will be always upright. और आपको बताया है कि जहां भी कहीं भी आपको ऐसा कोई एक्सट्रीम वर्ड दिखे जैसे कि ऑलवेज, जिनको आप लाइकली हो कि आप बाद में गलत कर दोगे, तो उनको हाईलाइट कर लेना। इट विल बी ऑलवेज अपराइट, राइट? बिकॉज एनर्जी विल ऑलवेज फ्लो लाइक दिस। इट्स नॉट पॉसिबल कि इस लेवल पे एनर्जी ज्यादा हो, सॉरी इट्स नॉट पॉसिबल दैट इस लेवल पे एनर्जी कम हो एंड इस लेवल पे एनर्जी ज्यादा हो, बिकॉज ओनली 10% ऑफ द एनर्जी इज गोइंग। So because of the 10% rule, it is always upright. As we move up, the amount of energy available is less, right? Now what does that mean? यहाँ पे it does not mean कि एक particular plant में बहुत ज्यादा energy है और eagle में बहुत कम energy है. No, it means because of this law, the number of plants will be a lot. इनके level की बात हो रही है primary producer पे, किसी एक particular की बात नहीं हो रही. The abundance, the entire level is being represented. So it is being talked that इस लेवल पे इतनी एनर्जी प्रेजेंट है, तो बहुत सारे यहां पे प्राइमरी प्रोड्यूसर्स होंगे। टू सस्टेन वन टर्शरी कंज्यूमर यू विल रिक्वायर मेनी प्राइमरी प्रोड्यूसर्स, क्योंकि 10% करके इतनी कम एनर्जी ही वहां तक पहुंच रही है। दिस इज व्हाट द पिरामिड ऑफ एनर्जी इज टेलिंग अस एंड इट विल बी ऑलवेज अपराइट, राइट? सो देयर आर प्रोड्यूसर्स, लेट्स से बनानास, so there will be many bananas, slightly less fruit flies, then toucans and then jaguars who will eat the toucans, right? तो वहां तक सिर्फ 0.1% ऑफ एनर्जी रह जाती है अगर बनानास में 100% है तो, right? That is why it is said, जो आपने ये सुना होगा, the vegan movement is very climate friendly. Why? Because if you eat something at this level, let's say you eat chicken at this level, right? To sustain one chicken, you will require so many bananas, right? Or so much grass, right? तो आप जो एक चिकन खा रहे हो, you are eating so many plants. You are because आपको एनर्जी तो उतनी ही चाहिए, right? But पहुंच 10% ही रही है. So to sustain one chicken, you require, let's say, 5 acres of grass. Just an example, okay? Or you could eat a 1 acre of grass yourself. You could become a vegan, right? You could not take animal products. So you would not require or you would not be such a burden on the ecosystem. Because आप क्या कर रहे हो, अगर आप ये खा रहे हो, तो you are placing yourself at a higher trophic level. So you are now getting only the 10% of the energy that is there at this trophic level. So you are now being dependent on even more of Earth's bounty, even more of plants you are being now dependent on. अगर आप directly plant खा लेते, plant के level पे energy ज्यादा थी, तो आपको कम खाना खाना पड़ता. If you are eating a chicken, the chicken is eating plant, तो आप 10% का 10% ले रहे हो through your energy. So you are now causing lot of plants to die to have one meal, and that is why it is said that the vegan movement is much more climatically conscious than having non-veg food. Okay, now what is the relevance of the pyramid of energy? The food pyramid or the pyramid of energy is representing the flow of energy, and it illustrates that the amount of energy transferred from one level to the next level. ठीक है? So it helps us understand कि primary producers कितने important हैं, because they are the ones that are producing all the energy. It also helps us understand कि food chain में limits क्यों होती हैं, because सिर्फ 10% ही मिल रही है. So beyond a point you cannot have a longer food chain, right? So it is a simple way to visualize the complex interactions that is happening between organisms and the energy transfer that is happening in an ecosystem. Okay, all right. Second is pyramid of biomass. अभी हमने pyramid of energy देखा कि प्राइमरी प्रोड्यूसर के लेवल पे कितनी एनर्जी है, प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर के लेवल पे कितनी एनर्जी है, सेकेंडरी कंज्यूमर के लेवल पे कितनी एनर्जी है, टर्शरी कंज्यूमर के लेवल पे कितनी एनर्जी है. दिस वी हैव सीन. ओके, नाउ लेट अस सी अ पिरामिड ऑफ बायोमास. इट इज अगेन अ ग्राफिकल रिप्रेजेंटेशन। ये दिखाता है कि व्हाट इज द अमाउंट ऑफ लिविंग ऑर्गेनिक मैटर। लिविंग ऑर्गेनिक मैटर और बायोमास, हमने देखा बायोमास क्या होता है, वी सॉ इट इज ड्राई वेट। ओके, बायोमास इज नथिंग बट ड्राई वेट। जैसे हमने देखा था फ्रूट में बायोमास था, राइट। सो द ड्राई वेट, वाटर हटा के जो आपका वेट है वो बायोमास है। दैट लिविंग ऑर्गेनिक मैटर और बायोमास दैट इज प्रेजेंट एट ट्रोफिक लेवल्स, वो देखता है पिरामिड ऑफ बायोमास। सो इट रिप्रेजेंट्स द रिलेटिव अमाउंट ऑफ बायोमास एट ईच लेवल with the largest biomass at the base of the pyramid and successively smaller biomass। धीरे धीरे लाइक इट शोज कि अच्छा बेस में प्राइमरी प्रोड्यूसर्स में सबसे ज्यादा बायोमास होगा, फिर थोड़ा कम, फिर थोड़ा कम, फिर थोड़ा कम। बट इट इज नॉट ऑलवेज परफेक्ट, इट इज नॉट ऑलवेज अ परफेक्ट पिरामिड शेप। हर बार ऐसा परफेक्ट नहीं होता। इट कैन बी अफेक्टेड बाय फैक्टर्स सच एज द टर्नओवर रेट ऑफ ऑर्गेनिजम्स। देखते हैं इस बात का क्या मतलब है। हमेशा ये परफेक्टली अपराइट नहीं होता, इट कैन बी अफेक्टेड बाय द टर्नओवर रेट। अगर हम यहां देखें इन अ टेरेस्ट्रियल इकोसिस्टम, देयर आर प्रोड्यूसर्स, देयर आर हर्बीवोर्स, देयर आर प्राइमरी कार्निवोर एंड देयर इज अ टॉप कार्निवोर। एक टॉप कार्निवोर वुड सस्टेन ऑन लेट्स से 3 प्राइमरी प्रोड्यूसर्स, राइट। तो यहां पे बायोमास ज्यादा है, यहां पे बायोमास कम है। सो दिस इज अ नॉर्मल टेरेस्ट्रियल सिस्टम, नॉर्मल अपराइट पिरामिड, राइट। बट इन केस ऑफ अ aquatic इकोसिस्टम, द प्रोड्यूसर्स का बायोमास इज वेरी स्मॉल। उसके बाद प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर्स जो हर्बीवोर्स हैं उनका ज्यादा है। ये फाइटोप्लैंक्टन है या डायटम हो सकता है, ये जैसे दिस कुड बी डायटम और दिस कुड बी फाइटोप्लैंक्टन। ओके, सो यहां पर जो है दिस इज वेरी लेस। ओके, द बायोमास हियर इज वेरी लेस, यहां पे इट्स मोर एंड एट द टॉप इट्स इवन मोर। अब ये कैसे पॉसिबल है? यहां से एनर्जी तो 10% जानी थी, बायोमास वहां ज्यादा है। हाउ इज दैट पॉसिबल? दिस इज पॉसिबल बिकॉज ऑफ लाइफ स्पैन। बिकॉज जब हम बायोमास मेजर करते हैं, वी मेजर इट एट वन पर्टिकुलर टाइम, कि इस टाइम पे कितना है, नॉट ओवर टाइम, राइट। हम एक टाइम पे मेजर करते हैं। तो जो फाइटोप्लैंक्टन है, फॉर एग्जाम्पल, द फाइटोप्लैंक्टन लिव्स ओनली फॉर 2 to 3 days, द zooplankton lives for 7 to 8 days, small fish live for 15 to 20 days and shark lives for 10 years. So over a year, at one time, phytoplankton it keeps dying very quickly. So since it keeps on dying, अगर मैं over time measure करूं, ये एक टाइम पे सिर्फ 2 से 3 दिन ही जिंदा रहता है। So it can only be present at this level. So its level would be less. Over time, of course, अगर मैं पूरे 10 साल का मेजर करूं तो एक ही शार्क होगी and many phytoplankton would have overturned. तो एनर्जी पास ऑन हो जाएगी। बट अगर मैं सिर्फ एक इंस्टेंट पे देखूं तो फाइटोप्लैंक्टन का नंबर कम होगा, बिकॉज वो रहता ही जिंदा 2-3 दिन के लिए। न्यू फाइटोप्लैंक्टन आर बीइंग प्रोड्यूस्ड, ओल्ड वंस आर बीइंग डाइंग within the idea of 2 to 3 days. That is why this is possible, that in an aquatic ecosystem the pyramid of biomass is inverted. At one time, if I just see a snapshot right now, there would be one shark जो बहुत बड़ी है and phytoplankton बहुत छोटे हैं। But अगर over time देखूंगा तो over time phytoplankton इतने हैं कि वो shark को एनर्जी प्रोवाइड कर दे। But at one time only little bit of them are alive because उनका लाइफ स्पैन बहुत छोटा है। This small lifespan is called what? This small lifespan is called their turnover number. Since their turnover number is very high, वो जल्दी जल्दी टर्नओवर होते हैं। Since their turnover number is very high, the shark, one shark at one time, I will see one huge shark, but very less phytoplankton. So the pyramid of biomass will look like this, but over time they would provide a lot of energy because they die every 2 to 3 days. जल्दी जल्दी वो मर रहे हैं, right? Okay. At one particular amount of time, the biomass at the lower trophic levels are lower than that of the higher trophic levels. Hence, there is an inverted biomass pyramid. But if I see not at one particular time, but if I see over time, if I see 10 years, then biomass would be more in the lower level. But हम जब pyramid of biomass देखते हैं, हम सिर्फ एक टाइम पे स्नैपशॉट देखते हैं कि इस टाइम पे कैसा दिख रहा है। तो इस टाइम पे it looks inverted. So pyramid of biomass can be inverted, right? So if you see the pyramid of biomass, biomass is written here, dry weight per unit area. This is what it looks like in a terrestrial ecosystem. Again, terrestrial ecosystem, but in an aquatic ecosystem, it looks like this because ये चीजें हर दो दिन में replace होती रहती हैं. So at a particular time, the biomass that is there at this place is less, and that is why the pyramid looks inverted. Okay. Now the last is pyramid of number. Pyramid of number is obviously normal. वो दिखाता है कि हर level पे कितने trophic organisms हैं. जैसे देयर आर 10,000 श्रिम्प, देन 1,000 ब्लीक्स, 100 पर्च बर्ड्स, 10 pike birds and 1 osprey. These are all the types of birds that are eating each other. But ये दिखाते हैं बहुत ज्यादा है, फिर कम. This is a normal pyramid of number, upright pyramid of number. But it could be inverted also. कैसे कि एक ट्री है, एक ट्री पे बहुत सारे लेडी बर्ड सर्वाइव करते हैं और उस बहुत सारे लेडी बर्ड्स पे और बहुत ज्यादा बर्ड सर्वाइव करते हैं बिकॉज द नंबर ऑफ ट्रीज इज जस्ट वन. मेनी बर्ड्स कुड सर्वाइव हियर एंड लेडी बर्ड्स कुड सर्वाइव हियर, राइट. तो पिरामिड ऑफ नंबर भी ऊपर नीचे हो सकता है. सो अगर आपको ये समझ नहीं आ रहा है, the only thing that you actually need to remember is that it is only the pyramid of energy that will be always upright. pyramid of energy हमेशा सीधा होगा because वहां पे we have something called the 10% rule. वो violate नहीं हो सकता. But in a pyramid of biomass, in certain conditions, it can be upright, it can be ulta, and a pyramid of number could also be ulta in certain conditions, right? वो conditions हम देख चुके हैं. अब ये देखो स्पिंडल शेप्ड पिरामिड ऑफ नंबर के प्रोड्यूसर तो एक है, हर्बीवोर्स 5 हैं एंड फिर से कार्निवोर 1 है. ये बर्ड्स के केस में एक ट्री पे 4 या 5 बर्ड रह रहे हैं और ये पांचों बर्ड को खाने के लिए एक कार्निवोर है. तो दिस शेप इज कॉल्ड स्पिंडल शेप्ड. So pyramid of number could be normal upright pyramid, it could be inverted pyramid, or it could be spindle shaped also. The only pyramid that is always upright is the pyramid of energy. Right. Now let us learn the idea of bioaccumulation. Bioaccumulation क्या होता है? It is the gradual accumulation. Accumulation means इकट्ठा होना. Accumulation means इकट्ठा होना. Bioaccumulation means living thing में किसी चीज का इकट्ठा होना would be bioaccumulation. So bioaccumulation is the gradual accumulation of substances such as pesticides and other chemicals in an organism. When does it occur? It occurs when an organism absorbs a substance at a rate faster than the substance is lost. अगर मैं कोई चीज absorb ज्यादा तेज करूं लेकिन उसको excrete उतना तेज ना करूं, absorb तो मैं बहुत जल्दी करूं बट मैं excrete उतना तेज ना करूं, that would be called bioaccumulation because it would get accumulated in my body, right? Don't confuse this with biomagnification. Biomagnification कुछ और होता है, अभी बताऊंगा. But bioaccumulation is at one level. At my level, I am absorbing something very quickly, but not releasing it as quickly. It would be bioaccumulation. अब down to earth में एक article आया on bioaccumulation of microplastics in mosquitoes. तो इसलिए आपको बता रहा हूं because down to earth से बहुत बार questions आ जाते. So there was an article in Down to Earth on microplastics getting into mosquitoes, right? And they are contaminating food chain. So what did they see? They see that microbeads or microplastics in all the life stages of mosquito were there, and then mosquito comes and bites us. तो वहां पे bioaccumulation हो रहा है mosquito में, and then it could come to our blood also. It could contaminate other food chain also, right? So any flying insect that spends part of its life in water can become a carrier of plastic pollution, thus resulting in biomagnification at higher tropics. ये biomagnification है, वो bioaccumulation है. I'll tell you the difference in just a minute. Okay? मस्कीटो के अंदर ही हुआ तो bioaccumulation, मस्कीटो ने मेरे को काट लिया और फिर मेरे भी लेवल्स में होने लग गया तो biomagnification. And I'll just tell you what that means. मस्कीटो की लाइफ साइकिल में क्या हो रहा था? We saw कि प्लास्टिक अक्यूमुलेशन हो रहा था बिकॉज मस्कीटो जनरली ग्रोज इन वाटर एंड देयर वाज प्लास्टिक पोल्यूशन इन द वाटर्स दैट वी हैव. तो वाटर में देयर वाज प्लास्टिक पोल्यूशन, तो मस्कीटो की लाइफ साइकिल में प्लास्टिक और माइक्रो प्लास्टिक्स वर बीइंग अक्यूमुलेटेड. दिस लेड टू अक्यूमुलेशन इन द मस्कीटो ऑफ प्लास्टिक. नाउ लेट अस सी व्हाट बायोमैग्निफिकेशन इज. बायोअक्यूमुलेशन इज हैपनिंग इन अ सिंगल ऑर्गेनिज्म over the span of its life. Higher concentration in older individuals. मैं पूरी लाइफ आर्सेनिक अब्सॉर्ब करता रहूं फ्रॉम दी एटमॉस्फेयर. मान लो ऐसा कोई सिस्टम हो तो मेरी बॉडी के अंदर अक्यूमुलेट हो जाएगा आर्सेनिक बिकॉज आई एम रिलीजिंग इट स्लोअर, अब्सॉर्बिंग इट मोर. सो दैट वुड बी बायो अक्यूमुलेशन. बायोमैग्निफिकेशन क्या है? बायोमैग्निफिकेशन है ट्रांसफर ऑफ केमिकल्स फ्रॉम लोअर ट्रॉफिक लेवल्स टू हायर ट्रॉफिक लेवल. ट्रांसफर ऑफ केमिकल्स फ्रॉम लोअर ट्रॉफिक लेवल्स टू हायर ट्रॉफिक लेवल्स. एक ऑर्गेनिज्म में होगा तो क्या कहेंगे? बायोअक्यूमुलेशन. अगर इट्स हैपनिंग फ्रॉम वन ट्रॉफिक लेवल टू द नेक्स्ट दैट वुड बी बायोमैग्निफिकेशन, राइट? जैसे मान लो प्राइमरी प्रोड्यूसर्स के लेवल पे थोड़ा कम, फिर प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर, फिर सेकेंडरी कंज्यूमर, फिर कार्निवोर। जैसा हमने देखा था, मान लो these are 4 plants. This 4th plant is required to sustain 3 cows, which is required to sustain 2 wolves, which is required to sustain 1 lion. मान लो हम ऐसा देखें, यहां पे I would say plant, this I would say cow, this I would say wolf, and this I would say lion. तो अगर एक प्लांट में सॉयल कंटेमिनेशन की वजह से देयर कम्स अ केमिकल कॉल्ड आर्सेनिक, एग्जाम्पल दे रहा हूं बस, अगर यहां पे मान लो आर्सेनिक आ जाए इन प्लांट्स में, तो अब जितना आर्सेनिक इन 4 प्लांट्स में है उतना इन 3 काउज में होगा, क्योंकि इन 3 काउज ने इन 4 प्लांट्स को खाया है। जितना आर्सेनिक इन 3 काउज में है उतना इन 2 वुल्फ्स में होगा, और जितना आर्सेनिक इन 2 वुल्फ्स में है उतना इस एक लायन में होगा। So if you go up the food chain, if you go up the trophic levels, at the higher trophic level, if this amount of arsenic was X, this amount would be 4X. So there is magnification. Here X amount of arsenic was present in one organism, but here 4X arsenic would be present in one organism. So the arsenic here has magnified as we have moved up the trophic levels. This is the idea of biomagnification. Biomagnification, because magnification means increase in the size. So as we move up the trophic levels, there is magnification. For example, when DDT is a pesticide used to kill mosquitoes, हम इसे क्या करते हैं, हम इसे aquatic bodies में स्प्रे कर देते हैं, right? We spray DDT in aquatic bodies. होता क्या है, फिश उसको खा लेती हैं, right? तो अगर सिर्फ फिश की बात करें, मैं सिर्फ फिश में देखूं, फिश में कॉन्सेंट्रेशन इंक्रीज होना, दैट उसको मैं क्या कहूंगा, सिर्फ बायो अक्यूमुलेशन। बट फिश को अदर ऑर्गेनिजम्स ने खाया, फिश को और अदर ऑर्गेनिजम्स ने खाया, तो द कॉन्सेंट्रेशन ऑफ डीडीटी इज इंक्रीज्ड एट ईच सक्सेसिव ट्रॉफिक लेवल, देन इट वुड लीड टू द प्रोसेस ऑफ बायोमैग्निफिकेशन, x से 4x। नाउ biomagnification is also known as bioamplification, is the increase in the concentration of a substance or in the tissues of an organism at successively higher levels in a food chain. Right? अब ये क्यों होता है, ये एक है कि जो पर्टिकुलर चीज है, जो सब्सटेंस है, जो बायोअक्यूमुलेट हो रहा है, जैसे डीडीटी मान लो बायोअक्यूमुलेट हो, तो उसे परसिस्टेंट होना चाहिए, इट शुड be there, it should be a persistent pollutant. When we read pollutants, we will read something called persistent organic pollutants. So they are at a very high risk of biomagnification. There is a convention that talks about persistent organic pollutants. I'm not talking about it now, not confusing you. We'll read about this. But when we read persistent organic pollutants, just remember, because they are persistent in the organic food chain, in the organic levels, उनको excrete नहीं किया जा सकता आसानी से, they remain in your body, so they have the potential to biomagnify. If there is a low or non-existent rate of internal degradation or excretion, अगर excretion का rate कम है, अगर वो persistent ज्यादा है, तो they will magnify. Now there are food chain energetics, right? So if above the food chain the concentration is successively increasing, obviously there are chances of biomagnification, right? अब जैसे हम बात करते हैं DDT की, DDT is, as I told you, a pesticide that was used to kill mosquitoes. तो हमने क्या किया, we sprayed DDT in water. अब water में क्या था, मान लो कोई प्राइमरी प्रोड्यूसर है जैसे फाइटोप्लैंक्टन, या कोई प्राइमरी प्रोड्यूसर है जैसे डायटम, या कोई प्राइमरी प्रोड्यूसर है जैसे कि ब्लू ग्रीन एल्गे, ठीक है। मैंने इसको लिया, इसको खाया फिश ने, तो फिश में लेवल बढ़ गया, या मैंने जू प्लैंक्टन ने पहले खाया, फिर फिश ने खाया तो और लेवल बढ़ गया, फिर लार्ज फिश ने खाया और लेवल बढ़ गया, एंड फाइनली व्हेन इट केम टू एन ईगल, टू अ फिश ईटिंग बर्ड, टू एन ईगल, द लेवल और द कंसंट्रेशन ऑफ डीडीटी हैड इंक्रीज्ड अ लॉट. दिस इज द आइडिया ऑफ बायोमैग्निफिकेशन. नाउ कैसा पॉल्यूटेंट होना चाहिए? इट मस्ट बी लॉन्ग लिव्ड, इट मस्ट बी मोबाइल, इट मूव्स व्हेन इट इज स्टोर्ड इन द बायोमास, तभी तो ऊपर मूव करेगा. और ये कैसे बनता है स्टोर्ड इन बायोमास? इट इज फैट सॉल्युबल. If it is fat soluble, there is a chance that it will be biomagnified. Why? Because याद करो, only biomass is available at the next level, and fat is one way of storage of biomass, right? So if it is fat soluble, if it is non-biodegradable, then there are the chances that this thing would be susceptible to the idea of biomagnification. अब यहीं पे आपकी साइंस एंड टेक की रिवीजन कंटिन्यू करते हुए, टेल मी व्हाट आर द 4 फैट सॉल्युबल विटामिन। हमने विटामिन भी पढ़े हैं, टेल मी व्हाट आर द 4 फैट सॉल्युबल विटामिन। 4 विटामिन होते हैं जो फैट सॉल्युबल होते हैं। वी हैव रेड देम, टेबल में ऐसे टेबल यहां पे था, यहां पे पहले फैट सॉल्युबल विटामिन लिखे थे, फिर यहां पे नॉन फैट सॉल्युबल विटामिन लिखे थे, यहां पे फिर उनका नाम लिखा था, यहां उनकी डिजीज लिखी थी। तो ये जो थे फैट सॉल्युबल विटामिन, ये 4 कौन से थे, यू टेल मी इन द कमेंट्स। ओके, अब कुछ एग्जांपल देखते हैं बायोमैग्निफिकेशन के जो हमारे उसमें हुए। डीडीटी आपने डाला टू किल मस्कीटोज, हमने देखा डीडीटी इंक्रीज कर गया। इसका इफेक्ट क्या हुआ, जब ईगल्स के लेवल पे, हाई लेवल पे, राइट, व्हेन द डीडीटी गॉट अक्यूमुलेटेड, इट लेड टू देयर एग शेल्स बिकमिंग वीक। तो जो वो एग्स ले कर रही थी ईगल्स, दोज एग्स वर वीक, राइट, एंड दोज एग्स गॉट क्रश्ड इजिली। So those eggshells were crushed easily and that led to their population. Eagles की population started declining because उनके eggs weak हो गए. So we sprayed DDT and water and what happened? Eagle की population कम हो गई. This was written about by Rachel Carson in her famous book called The Silent Spring. The Silent Spring, या आपने देखा होगा, spring is also a word used for revolution. So she said, this is a silent revolution happening where because of our overuse of pesticides, we are killing the environment. This could be a wonderful introduction to any essay that you write on climate change and human intervention of climate change. That Rachel Carson in her book, The Silent Spring, has mentioned how human interventions in the environment at very small levels can lead to huge effects at levels that are not even imagined by us due to the process of biomagnification. Therefore, we must be very careful when we interfere with nature and environment. And if you quote this book, the examiner will feel कि आप पढ़े लिखे हो, right? So this is the book, Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, used the idea of biomagnification the first time when DDT was causing that eagles were leading to crushed eggs because of our use of DDT. Then in Borneo is a place, because of this biomagnification, such a concept had happened that we had to drop cats from the sky. I'll just explain that to you. Then there is Minamata disease. Please mark this as important. काफी important है ये. Minamata disease is mercury bioaccumulation in shellfish. Shellfish में mercury की bioaccumulation होना. होता क्या है Minamata disease में? राइट, व्हाट इज हैपनिंग इज कि आपने फैक्ट्रीज लगा दी, राइट, माइंस लगा दी, उससे मर्क्यूरी आप पानी में भेजते हो एज अ पोल्यूटेंट। ओके, अब पोल्यूटेंट की तरह आपने मर्क्यूरी भेजा इन पानी, इन वाटर स्मॉल फिश ईट इट, देन बिग फिश, देन इवन बिगर फिश, देन दीज बिगर फिश आर कॉल्ड शेलफिश। नाउ द पीपल ऑफ जापान, दे लाइक टू ईट दिस शेलफिश, बट हो क्या रहा था, मर्क्यूरी एक्यूमुलेशन हो रही थी। So once they ate this shellfish, they developed this disease because in humans the level of mercury became very high. तो ये disease होने लग गई बच्चों में. To their children, it led to the Minamata disease due to overuse of mercury. तो आपको अगर आपको याद रखना है, you definitely have to remember that Minamata disease is caused by mercury because there is also a Minamata convention that is administered by the United Nations Environment Program that deals with this Minamata disease. So please remember Minamata disease caused due to mercury bioaccumulation in shellfish. Then there is diclofenac. Diclofenac हम भी खाते हैं. Diclofenac is a painkiller. या diclofenac को यूज किया जा रहा था for cows so that they would give more milk, और उनमें कोई डिजीज हो रही थी तो इंडियन फार्मर्स क्या कर रहे थे, वो काउस की फीड में डिक्लोफेनाक मिक्स करके उनको दे रहे थे, राइट। फिर क्या हुआ, काउस यूज्ड टू डाई, और काउस को खाता था कौन, वल्चर। सो व्हेन द वल्चर स्टार्टेड ईटिंग द इंडियन काउस, देयर वर द वल्चर्स गॉट द accumulation of diclofenac in their systems and that led to a huge extinction of vultures. Huge number of vultures died and जब हम species पढ़ेंगे I'll tell you that इंडिया में जो 8 तरह के vultures हैं उनमें से 5 critically endangered हैं and this is one of the huge reasons use of diclofenac in cows. Okay, अब मैं आपको बोर्नियो वाली चीज बताता हूं. बोर्नियो में उन्होंने क्या किया, उन्होंने वहां पे बहुत ज्यादा मस्कीटो पॉपुलेशन थी, तो उन्होंने कहा कि यार मस्कीटो मारने के लिए उन्होंने बहुत ज्यादा डीडीटी स्प्रे किया। नाउ व्हाट डिड डीडीटी स्प्रे डू? मस्कीटोज को नॉर्मली खाते थे गेको। गेको इज लाइक अ लिजर्ड। ओके, लिजर्ड्स नॉर्मली मस्कीटो को खाती थी, आपने डीडीटी स्प्रे किया तो डीडीटी अक्यूमुलेशन हो गया इन द गेको। नाउ व्हाट हैपेंड? दिस गेको इज नॉर्मली ईटन बाय द कैट। तो कैट जो है वो इन गेकोस को खाती थी, कैट में और भी ज्यादा डीडीटी एक्यूमुलेशन हो गया, इतना ज्यादा डीडीटी उन्होंने स्प्रे कर दिया था दैट ये जो कैट्स हैं इनमें भर गया डीडीटी। द कैट्स वर फुल ऑफ डीडीटी। देयर वाज ह्यूज एक्यूमुलेशन ऑफ, or magnification rather, there was huge magnification of DDT at the level of cats. So cats started dying in huge numbers. That led to a point that rats, because normally who is the predator of rat? The normal predator of rat is a cat, right? Now cats are starting to die, so the rat population rose up huge numbers. So there were huge number of rats, and that started irritating the villagers because rats used to destroy the pests, the field. Rat used to destroy the crops. So they had to actually drop cats from the sky in Borneo. From aeroplanes with parachutes, they literally had to drop cats from the sky to deal with this rat menace. And this was the effect of biomagnification in Borneo. Okay, in vultures, what is happening? Diclofenac derivatives are seen in our vultures across India and neighboring countries. Because of the biomagnification of vultures, there is increased mortality. Because of the biomagnification of diclofenac used in cow feed, there is increased mortality of vultures, and vultures are becoming extinct. I'll just import the next part of the slides. Give me a second. We'll just be done. In the next 10 minutes, we'll be done. ADEK. Good. Yes, neck drooping disease. Good, Rashmi. ADENK. These are the 4 fat soluble. Good. Okay. Now, I know आज के लिए काफी concepts हो गए. So what we'll do is, we will just read the idea of biotic interactions. इसके example मैं आपको याद नहीं करा रहा, बस concept समझ लो. Example हम कल याद करते हैं. Then we'll do a test of 8 questions. This test will be of environment. We are still left with 20 questions of emerging technologies. This I will give to you as a surprise when I think you will have forgotten emerging technologies. Not now, because अभी तो I think आपको याद होगा. So 3-4 क्लास बाद जब आप भूल गए होगे emerging technologies, then I'll make you do the test of emerging technologies, right? And if you want, after that at 6:30, then we can talk for 10 minutes. Let me ask you some questions on polity. Let's see how much you remember. Okay, so biotic interaction. Okay, biotic interaction are interactions between different living organisms. अब देखो, if in an ecosystem there are different living organisms, they are obviously going to interact with each other, right? हमने देखा था ये इंटरेक्शन होती है. दिस स्टडी ऑफ इंटरेक्शन इज व्हाट वाज कॉल्ड इकोलॉजी. तो ये जो इंटरेक्शन है, राइट, दीज इंटरेक्शंस कैन बी पॉजिटिव, दे नेगेटिव और न्यूट्रल, मीनिंग दैट वन, लेट्स से 2 organisms are interacting, you and I are interacting, you can gain from it, you can lose from this interaction, or you can be neutral. Same for me, I can gain from it, I can be positive, I can be negative or neutral. So let's just read the names of these interactions, understand what they are. We'll see the examples tomorrow. Okay, so these are the names. They are amensalism, mutualism, commensalism, competition, parasitism and predation. Okay, let's understand one and each of them in detail. पहला है mutualism. Mutualism is an interaction in which both species benefit. Both species benefit from the mutualism. So mutualism is represented as plus plus. Since species 1 and species 2 both are benefiting, it would be represented as plus plus. So there is interdependence on species. Because of working together, the species can enhance their chances of survival. That is what would be mutualism, mutual benefit. Okay, for example, aphids and ants. We'll see the examples tomorrow. Okay, second is symbiosis. Now इस पे बहुत confusion है लोगों को. Symbiosis actually just means, it has 2 words, syn meaning together and biosis meaning living. So symbiosis just means that 2 organisms are living together. Okay, symbiosis just means that 2 organisms are living together. Okay, now symbiotic relationships can be negatively also, positive also, neutral also. Positive symbiotic relationship will be called mutualism. Positive symbiotic relationship would be mutualism. Symbiosis only means that you are living together. Symbiosis. Syn means together, biosis means word breakdown, right? Okay, example कल देखते हैं. Then there is proto cooperation. Pro, already seen, word breakdown works everywhere. Before cooperation, there is not actual cooperation. It hasn't completely started. It has not reached the level of mutualism. It's just started, right? It is just there. So it is, proto cooperation is a type of interaction in which there is not yet fully mutualistic. It is still proto, it is still in the early stage. So it will also be called as plus, but it is not as same as mutualism. So mutualism is obligatory. You have to do it, and only then you both will get benefit. Proto cooperation means that there is no survival benefit. You do it, you will get better ideas, you will get a better survival chance, but it's not necessary. In mutualism, it is necessary for the organisms to interact. Example like in rhizobium, bacteria, etc. ये हम कल देखते हैं. Just get an idea that proto cooperation is that it is not yet fully mutualistic. It is still beneficial to both, but it's not very important for your survival. Now, over time, the relationship may evolve into a more symbiotic or mutualistic one, but not at the moment, right? So in proto cooperation, the interaction is temporary. You may get the advantage, and after getting the advantage, you can separate. So there is no survival issue, right? For example, plants and their pollinators. Pollinator क्या होता है? Pollinators, pollen we already know. Pollen grains are the animal or the male reproductive part of the plant. So pollinator क्या होता है? It takes the male reproductive plant of pollinator. Pollinator takes the male reproductive part and takes it from one flower to the other. So if there is one flower like this which has pollen, pollinator would come, it would sit here, it would then sit on a different plant. So the pollen grain would be transferred. So it is helping it do for cross fertilization. This would be pollinator system. And what is the advantage of the pollinator? The pollinator gets to take the nectar. Pollinator gets to take the nectar. So it is like helping for both, but it's not necessary. Without this also, pollinator can get its food somewhere else, and there are other ways of pollen transfer like wind. Okay. Now there is commensalism. Commensalism is also an interaction that in which at least one species derives the benefit, and the second one is neither benefited nor harmed. So this will be represented as plus/0. One will derive a benefit, the other is neither benefited nor harmed. 0. Just name याद करते हैं, example कल देखेंगे. जैसे barnacles staying on a whale, right? So when they are staying on a whale, the barnacles, they get shelter, but the whale doesn't get any advantage. Okay, so this is commensalism, +0. Then there is predation. Predation means hunting. So in hunting, of course, one organism is getting an advantage and the other one is losing its life. So it will be represented as plus/. For example, a lion eating a deer. A lion eating a deer would be predator-prey relationship, right? Okay. This is predation. Now, parasitism is also, you know what parasite means. So parasite is a foreign organism that would not kill its host, but derive energy from it. For example, leech, a tapeworm, a pathogen. It is taking its nutrition from you, but it doesn't kill you instantly. It might kill you in the future. So again, it is plus/, because the parasite is gaining an advantage, but you are not getting an advantage. You are losing your nutrition, your body's normal health because of the parasite. The difference between parasite and predation is parasite does not kill you instantly. Predation, a lion would kill a deer and eat it. A malarial parasite, for example, would occupy your body, take nutrition from you. Malarial parasite is Plasmodium, right? It would occupy your body, take advantage of you, take your nutrition, but not kill you instantly. It might kill you over long term. Okay. Now, parasites exhibit certain adaptations to exploit their host, right? Like they are taking shelter, food, and protection from you, and they have certain adaptations to ensure that you cannot detect them and they are protected from you. Parasites look something like this. These are parasites on a caterpillar, right? Now parasites can be viral parasites, microbial parasites, plant parasites, animal parasites. We have seen these examples: helminths, bacteria, virus, plant virus, etc. Now they can, either one parasite could be that it attaches to your body like a leech. It attaches to your body from the outside and sucks blood. That would be an ectoparasite because it stays on the outside. Or it could enter inside your body and live. That would be an endoparasite. So it could be an ectoparasite or an endoparasite, for a tapeworm, for example. Right? Okay. Now next there is competition. Competition refers to an interaction. When will competition happen? When there is niche overlap. So I hope you're able to connect this now. Competition happens when there is niche overlap, when the functional space that is there between two organisms becomes the same. So they overlap in their functional space, they overlap in their resource utilization, so there will be competition. So when resources are in more than adequate, right, so when resources are more and they are much more than what the organisms need, competition will not occur. But when they are inadequate to satisfy the need of the organism, the least adapted, the weakest, or the least aggressive individuals are often forced to face challenges. This is what competition is. This is exactly what you're doing here also. The number of seats is limited, the resources are limited, but the number of people who want those seats are much more. So the ones who don't study, the ones who don't work hard, the ones who are complacent will get eliminated. So there will be competitive exclusion, and competition happens when there is a niche overlap. Okay, now competition could be of two types. It could be interspecific, means between two species. Okay, between two species there could be competition for a limited resource. For example, lions and hyenas could compete for access to prey. Or there could be, or here you could see a lion and a leopard. Or there could be intraspecific competition, means within a species there could be competition. For example, plants may compete for water and nutrients in the soil, right? In competition, both the parties are losing out. Both are having to work harder. Both are not getting survival easily. So it will be represented as negative/negative. Okay. Then there is amensalism. What is there in amensalism? Amensalism is represented as negative/0, meaning that one species is getting harmed, the other one does not get harmed or get any advantage. For example, let's say in a forest, this long plant is growing and the small plant is growing. The bigger plant क्या करता है? The bigger plant की वजह से there is shade on the smaller plant. तो बड़े प्लांट की वजह से शैडो आ जाती है स्मॉलर प्लांट पे. अब स्मॉलर प्लांट पे क्या होगा? उसको सनलाइट नहीं मिल रही. If the smaller plant is not getting sunlight, it is unable to do photosynthesis. So it has a problem, right? Smaller plant is unable to do photosynthesis, has a problem. इसको क्या कहेंगे हम? This would be the victim species or the negatively affected species. बड़े प्लांट को कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ रहा. It is not intentionally causing this. So it would be negative/0, right? Okay. We're done with the biotic interactions. One last biotic interaction called neutralism is left. We'll do that tomorrow. Okay. It is not 6:30 yet, so I have delivered on my promise to stay on time. We are going to do 8 questions and going to see their answers. If you want to leave now, you can. We'll just do these 8 questions and finish the class. If you want, we can do these questions tomorrow also, but I'd really prefer that it's just 8 questions. So let's just do this. These are questions of environment, what you've just read. Without flipping the pages back, try and do these questions. Let's see how much you have remembered. Those who want to leave or want to attend PPP, they can take a leave. I'm not teaching anything new, and everything that I'm going to tell here is written in the slides. Okay. All right. So we're done for today. We're just taking a 2-minute break. It is 6:30. I promise that in environment, I will not overshoot the time. So it's 6:30. You can take a leave. If you want to stay here and do these PYQs, you can. If not, you can just download the slides and do them on your own time. Okay. मैं तो करूंगा यार. I am going to do it today. You can leave if you want to. I am not going anywhere. I am not even 20% exhausted. I can teach 3 more hours from here also. Okay, if you ask me to teach fundamental rights, I can teach you fundamental rights also right now. When I am teaching, I don't get tired. It's up to you. If you want to leave, some people were requesting that they want to leave, so you can take a leave. I am done with today's teaching. Okay. Okay. Okay, awesome. Do this. First question. It is ecosystem, okay? Yeah, okay, fine. Love your enthusiasm, guys. This is great. Pallavi, Soumya, Purva, Priya, Shikha, Akash. Good. Akash, Rajneesh, good. Okay. Good. Thank you for actively participating. Okay. See how repetition works. This was asked in 2014 also. Okay, last question. I've given you a hint. Okay, we're done. So again, ये बात, you might think this is like normal, but it's not. The fact that you've just attempted the test, you spent time here, you thought, and we were doing PYQs directly. इससे भी हो सकता है कि यूपीएससी इस बार 2-3 क्वेश्चन रिपीट कर दे. The fact that you did this is great. So congratulations on participating and on actively being here. कोई कट ऑफ की फिगर नहीं है. Even if you did everything wrong, it's completely fine. ठीक है, यहां पर you are just facing the antigen, not the pathogen. Okay. Now, which is the best description of the term ecosystem? Confusion must have been in option A and C. बाकी तो समझ आ ही रहा है. The part this is B is basically the definition of biosphere. Okay, so a community of organisms together with the environment in which they live, because ecosystem has both biotic and abiotic factors. Okay, right. Now next, which of the following terms describes not only the physical space occupied by an organism, but also its functional role? We have seen this ecological niche. Why did I teach you niche in detail? Because they have asked this before, right? So if they have asked this before, now it's possible that ecological niche can be asked in further detail next time. Okay, now next, correct sequence in a food chain. It was given directly in the slides. Diatoms are primary producers, then they are eaten by crustaceans, then by herrings, and this was again asked in 2021. So when you do environment PYQs, take care and read them carefully. Okay, then this. Reference to food chain in ecosystems, consider the following statements. Now, food chain illustrates the order in which a chain of organisms feed upon each other. Of course, this is correct, right? It illustrates the order, correct. Now, food chains are found within the population of a species. Within a population तो क्या हुआ? What population was like its species. Example से सोचो. Is a food chain found within the population of a human? Are humans only eating other humans? There might be one or two examples of cannibalism, but that's not a food chain is for. It's outside the population of a species. It is actually inside trophic levels. So second is wrong, and this much information is enough to solve this question. Answer is 1, but we'll still read the third one. A food chain illustrates the numbers of each organisms. No, it just shows the order. It does not show the numbers. Numbers would be shown by a pyramid of numbers, right? Not by a food chain. Okay. Now, with reference to food chain, which of the following are the decomposer organisms? ये तो हमने इतनी डिटेल में पढ़ लिया है that you must understand that they do no decomposition, right? They are just pathogens because they are not even living, right? They are borderline between living and non-living, so they can't do decomposition, right? If you just eliminate the first one, you would know that the answer is 2 and 3 only, right? Fungi and bacteria. Now, which of the following are detritivores? Detritivores are what? They are decomposers that are using the process of digestion. यहाँ पे अर्थ फॉर्म में तो कोई डाउट नहीं हुआ होगा किसी को भी, तो अर्थ फॉर्म इज ऑब्वियसली करेक्ट. अब आप देखो, इफ यू रीड द ऑप्शंस, सी हॉर्स, जेलीफिश, आप जस्ट थोड़ा सा इमेजिन, देखो, आई कैन नॉट टीच यू एवरी पॉसिबल स्पीशीज, ओके, इन 15 क्लासेस, इन इवन इन 100 classes, it's not possible to teach every species on the planet. What you need is to use a little bit of your mind and imagination. If you just look at jellyfish, we know what it looks like, right? It looks something like this, a top and something like this. So jellyfish, of course, is not going to do decomposition of dead and decaying matter in the sea, right? So if you just eliminate option 2, you would get the answer as 1, 3 and 5. And of course, we have red wood lice also. So the answer here is C. Now, consider the following. Which are the following are the primary producers? We already have gotten a question on this. This is nothing but blue-green algae. Answer is 2 and 3. But this shows you the amount of repetition that happens. Now, last question. Which of the following have species that can establish? Now, this is a question merely of logical guessing. एक ना एक cnidarian तो करता ही होगा ना establish some sort of symbiotic relationship, right? That's what it's asking, and it's asking symbiosis. It's not even asking mutualism. So it can just live with others. एक ना एक cnidarian तो करता होगा ना, एक ना एक fungi तो करता होगा, एक ना एक protozoa तो करता होगा. Even UPSC cannot go and check all of them. So the answer is D. Okay, so we're done. This is it. Now those who want to leave, they can go. Those who want to talk to me for some 10 minutes, I'm here for your doubts and questions. Before that, I want you to all tell me, what are the types of liberty? What are the types of liberty that are guaranteed in the preamble? Batao. What types of liberty are guaranteed in the preamble? I'll just stay here for 10 minutes, talk to you guys, then leave for the day. बताओ types of liberty in preamble. Shreya, Jay, good. No worries, Jay. This participation matters. Kajal, all correct. Wonderful. Sonali, good. Harshita, 8 out of 8. Good. Aditya, good. Sahil, good. Good job. Thank you for participating. Good. Divya, it's not just thought, belief and worship. और भी चीजें हैं. It is TEBFW. It is thought, expression, belief, faith and worship. Okay. All right. Now tell me. Okay, थोड़ा मुश्किल हो जाएगा आप लोगों के लिए. But चलो, tell me who votes in the election of an MLC. ये अगर आपको याद है, that means you're doing great in politics. Because this you would likely forget. So who votes in the election of an MLC? कुछ 1/6 होता था, कुछ 1/3 होता था, कुछ 1/12 होता था. करो याद. Harsh Dhakar, what do you mean nobody? Somebody will vote, right, for them. करो, याद करो, देखते हैं कितना याद है. Mohit, some graduate teacher. That's correct. It was there, but you need to remember the exact thing. Local bodies, MLA, teacher, graduates. Good. And what about the governor? You forgot the governor. Governor doesn't nominate them. MLAs, teacher, graduate, municipality representatives, and also governor. Governor also nominates some. Okay. Now go read this up. Which is 1/6, which is 1/3. ये चीजें आप भूल जाते हो. Right? This you forget. And this they can confuse you here. सिर्फ part 1 of लक्ष्मीकांत नहीं याद करना होता, पूरी लक्ष्मीकांत याद करनी होती है. Okay. Now tell me, if a governor has to appoint an MLC, has to nominate an MLC, okay, or has to, let's say, nominate a member as an MLA. Yeah, chalo, ab ye to it's not done anymore. If a governor has to nominate an MLC, right? Or I'll make it simpler for you. What are the criteria? What are the criteria at which members are nominated to the Rajya Sabha? And what are the criteria at which they are nominated at the state level? There is a certain set of criteria here and a certain set of criteria here. What is the difference? In Rajya Sabha level and at the state level, what are the difference of the criteria that are there for nominated members? Good, Roshikesh. Good. Literature, arts, science and social service at Rajya Sabha level, but at the state level there is one more addition, which is cooperative societies. तो अब अगर cooperative societies की बात हो ही गई है, अगर cooperative societies की बात हो ही गई है, why don't you tell me which amendment is concerned with cooperative societies, which fundamental right is concerned with cooperative societies, and which DPSP is concerned with cooperative societies? Tell me this. No, it's not 93rd. Yes, Ipshita, it's correct. Kiran, correct. Good. Fundamental right is Article 19. 19 का कौन सा part ये भी बताओ. This is 97. Good. It's not just 43, it is 43B. Okay. Not just 43, but 43B. Good. Now, अब DPSP की बात अगर हो ही रही है, अगर DPSP की बात हो ही रही है, tell me which DPSP is Article 48, which is 48A, and which is 49. Tell me this. But yeah, thank you all for participating so actively in this also. No, it's not related to women and children. अरे याद नहीं हो रहा निखिल, तो मैं अभी याद कराऊंगा ना. मैं क्यों बैठा हूं यहाँ पे फिर, याद नहीं हो रहा है तो. देखो मैं बता, दिमाग लग. देखो 48 इज हिंदी फॉर 48. 48 की हिंदी होती है 48. 48 से यू कैन रिमेंबर अड़ियल सांड. ओके, डोंट लाफ. So it is connected to animal husbandry, scientific methods of animal husbandry, and the prevention of the slaughter of milch cattle, which is basically milk giving cattle. उनका slaughter रोकना है. 48 is preventing the slaughter of sand. draught cattle, milk giving cattle, and having better animal husbandry. 48 for Adial Sand. Okay. Now 48A. अब देखो यार, if A is written, that means some amendment must have happened, right? Originally ये नहीं था. 48A was added at the time of Indira Gandhi. Shrimati Indira Gandhi ji was the one who was our PM who attended the Stockholm Conference on Environment. जब हम ये पढ़ेंगे, I will tell you that after the Stockholm Conference, this article was inserted, the Water Act was passed, the Air Act was passed. It has to do with environment. Okay, and 49 you can remember as Fort Pay. I'm not going to read this word. Fort Pay 49. Okay, don't shit on a fort. So it has to do with preserving our cultural heritage and forts, etc. So this is how you remember these three. अगर एक दो और याद करने हैं, सारे अभी नहीं याद कराता, नहीं तो आप भूल जाओगे. 44. 4 and 4 is uniform. So this is the Uniform Civil Code. Okay, so now you've remembered 48, 48A, 49, 44. I'll make you remember two more and then we'll go. 50. 50. When you make a half century, you separate two organs, you break them into half. So you separate the judiciary and the executive. So this talks about separating judicial and executive functions. The last one is 51. 51. So the one here looks like an I. I stands for International Peace. Okay. So अब DPSP में हमने कौन कौन से DPSP याद कर लिए? We have remembered the DPSP 44. 4 and 4 are uniform. So Uniform Civil Code. Then we have remembered 48. 48 for Adial Sand. We have remembered 49. Fort Pay 49. So you've remembered this is about forts. We've remembered 48A related to the Stockholm Conference or environment. We've remembered 50. We are doing 50-50 separation of judiciary and executive. And we are remembering 51. 51 mein one looks like an I, so international peace and security. This is the demonstration of how I do active recall. If you do and remember like this, आप कभी भी नहीं भूलोगे. Right? And if you remember DPSPs, not only are they very important for prelims, they will help you a lot when it comes to mains. मेंस में अगर आपको कोई क्वेश्चन है जहां पे कोई इंटरनेशनल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन की बात हो रही है, यू कैन राइट दैट एज पर आवर कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन इन द आर्टिकल 51 वी आर ऑब्लिगेटेड टू क्रिएट इंटरनेशनल पीस and harmony amongst nations, and therefore this particular XYZ organization is important. It looks like a good constitutional conclusion and आपके पास हमेशा ये available रहेगा. Right? So that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed this process. ऐसे बीच बीच में आपको दो तीन और भी याद करा दूंगा. तन में फटाक से क्यों करने हैं, सारे कराऊंगा, टेंशन मत लो. 38 भी कराऊंगा कल, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43 कल करा. ठीक है, डोंट वरी, सारे याद करा के भेजूंगा आपको. अरे पक्का कराऊंगा यार, लेकिन एक बार ही में कराऊंगा तो भूल जाओगे. इतने तो याद करो पहले. DPSP एंड फंडामेंटल ड्यूटीज यू विल रिमेंबर इन द नेक्स्ट 2 to 3 days. इस वीकेंड से पहले आपको सारी DPSP और सारी फंडामेंटल ड्यूटीज याद हो चुकी होंगी. दिस इज माई प्रॉमिस टू यू. ओके, डोंट वरी. चलो, थैंक यू फॉर योर टाइम. आई एंजॉयड दिस लेक्चर. होप यू लाइक्ड टुडे. एनवायरमेंट इज नॉट दैट टेक्निकल एज यू मस्ट हैव सीन. तो आराम से अपन निकलेंगे. कल हम बेसिक्स ऑफ एनवायरमेंट खत्म करते हैं. कल हम 1 पेजर ऑफ बेसिक्स रिवाइज करेंगे और फिर जो बचे हुए DPSPs हैं वो मैं आपको याद कराता हूँ. ऑल राइट, हैव अ गुड नाइट, हैव अ गुड इवनिंग, सी यू टुमारो.